Chapter 1036. Seeing that Yuan Xian was going overboard, Nye Sun slammed the table with a gloomy face. The force was so great that even the bowls and chopsticks on the table shook. Everyone in the tent was silent, even their breathing seemed to be concealed. "Do you think I'm wrong?" Yuan Xian was a burly old general with a thick beard on his coarse face. His appearance was rough. He sat there like a small mountain, as wide as two Nye Suns. He spoke in a low, muffled voice that was as loud and powerful as a large bell. "I forgot to restrain myself just now. I drank too much and lost my composure in public. Please punish me, my lord." Huang Song's stern gaze swept over Yuan Xian as a silent warning. Then he said pleasantly, "If that's the case, I'll go back to sober up first." Nye Sun got up and left. He faintly heard Yuan Xian's cold snort behind him. He secretly clenched his fists. The cold wind outside blew on his face, dispersing the lingering smell of alcohol around him. Where there were people, there was no lack of conflicts and disputes. Especially in a group with a complicated power structure, it was easier to breed discord. Civil officials and military generals were two conflicting groups that were difficult to reconcile. Nye Sun was too good-looking, so it was inevitable that he would be looked down upon and snubbed by people, especially military generals. They usually knew how to restrain themselves, but now that they had drunk too much, they unconsciously showed it. This was not a big conflict, and Nye Sun did not take it to heart. What worried him was Jiang Pengji's reaction. Others thought that Jiang Pengji was attracted to him, but Nye Sun did not think so. In terms of appearance, Wei Ci, who worked in Jiang Pengji's tent, was even better than him. Other than that, Nye Sun could not find anything wrong with him. He just felt very flustered, which made him lose his sense of propriety. On the other side, Jiang Pengji was supported by Wei Ci back to the bedroom where she was staying. "Now that there's no one around, my lord, you don't have to continue pretending, right?" How could he not know how much his lord could drink? The drunk Jiang Pengji leaned against him. When she heard this, she could not help but smile delightedly. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and with a little force, she rolled onto the bed with Wei Ci, pressing half of her body on top of him. "My lord." Wei Ci was so angry that his face turned slightly green. He raised his hand and tried to push her away. "Zixiao, what happened to you Xian was indeed my fault. Don't be so cold and heartless." Jiang Pengji looked like she was hugging a large doll. She rubbed his neck and mumbled, "You've been angry for so many days. It's time to cool down." It would have been better if she had not said it. Wei Ci was even angrier after she had said it. Was he such a narrow-minded person? "I'm not angry because of that." Wei Ci liked cleanliness. Even if he drank alcohol, he would only drink 2 cups and rarely touched the smell of alcohol. Jiang Pengji drank a lot of wine. She was like a moving wine jar. He almost fainted from the smell. Then, is it because of Nye Chengyun? Jiang Pengji smiled slyly. "Is Zixiao jealous?" Wei Ci said, "What's there to be jealous of? Nye Sun has been targeted by the Lord. She can't wait to pity him." He knew Jiang Pengji too well. Her actions just now were obviously to trick Nye Sun. It was a pity that Nye Sun didn't realize it. Jiang Pengji let go of his neck and rolled around like a child. She was drunk. Wei Ci was speechless. The Lord was really regressing as she lived. He secretly face-bombed. It was worth it to go along with her wishes. Otherwise, if others saw her childish side, where would the dignity of the Lord be? How does the Lord plan to trick Nye Sun? Wei Ci asked. "I'm slow-witted. I can't see through the Lord's arrangements." Jiang Pengji stopped tormenting him. She smiled and said, "This Nye Sun is very likely to be my poor cousin." Wei Ci was surprised. "Cousin?" Jiang Pengji said, Zixiao, you know that my father's legal wife isn't my biological mother. She's my mother's concubine sister, my aunt. Before she married my father, she was Meng Zhan's legal wife. She and Meng Zhan had 2 legitimate sons. One was the eldest cousin, Meng Heng, and the other was the second cousin. When the second cousin was born, Meng Zhan's favorite concubine also gave birth to an illegitimate son. Meng Zhan favored his concubine over his wife and confused the illegitimate son. He actually marked the illegitimate son as the legitimate son and threw the legitimate second son to his favorite concubine. However, his favorite concubine had a vicious heart. She sent someone to deal with the legitimate second son. My aunt said that the second cousin was born with a cinnabar between his eyebrows. It's very easy to recognize him. Wei Ci frowned. You identified him as Meng Erlang just based on a cinnabar between his eyebrows? Jiang Pengji smiled. Of course not. The most important thing is Nie Sun's appearance. He looks very much like my aunt. Similar appearance and the same cinnabar. Just based on these 2 points, Jiang Pengji dared to confirm Nie Sun's background. Wei Ci's mind word. He said, I heard Yumo say that Nie Sun came to Dongqing from Zhongzhou to look for blood relatives. In other words, Nie Sun was very likely to be Jiang Pengji's second cousin. Jiang Pengji said, I can feel it. He seems to know this too, but he didn't come forward to acknowledge me. Wei Ci's eyebrows twitched violently. He suddenly thought of the pitiful Yang Si in his previous life. In his previous life, Yang Si obediently stayed in Huang Song's tent as a strategist. At most, he was a little greedy. It was such a small flaw that the Lord actually grasped and used it as a breakthrough to drive a wedge between Huang Song and Yang Si. Could it be? Jiang Pengji snorted and laughed. If Nie Sun follows Bogeo, it will be difficult to make a move in the future. I am a person who does not hold back. If I accidentally kill him, my aunt will be very sad if she finds out. Just in case, it's better to help one's own people. Wei Ci was speechless. His heart ached even more for Nie Sun. What should he do? My lord wants to drive a wedge between Huang Song and Nie Sun? Jiang Pengji gasped and blinked innocently. Zixiao, why are you speaking so harshly? What do you mean by driving a wedge? Do I look like the kind of restless third child who likes to poach others? Bogeo and Qingyun have a close relationship. I won't do such a wicked thing. Wei Ci was speechless. Even a ghost wouldn't believe a word of what you said. Jiang Pengji stopped joking and said calmly, Bogeo has a suspicious personality, but being suspicious doesn't mean he suspects everything. If I drive a wedge between them right from the start, the effect will be counterproductive. After all, Bogeo isn't a fool. He has also grown up and is no longer the fair-weather friend who can be easily bullied. I don't know how Nie Sun found out about our relationship, but he didn't tell Huang Song. Nie Sun hid the truth to avoid arousing Huang Song's suspicions. However, the more secretive he is, the easier it is for others to suspect him. She laughed coldly. If he doesn't confess some things early on, he won't be able to say them when he wants to because he'll lose the best opportunity. He didn't confess earlier but chose to confess when others suspected him. Wouldn't this attract suspicion? Wei Ci sighed. What could he say? No one who was targeted by his lord would have a good ending. Jiang Pengji said, however, our current enemy is the Meng family of Zhangzhou. I have the intention to plot against Bogeo and Qingyun, but I have to pay attention to the timing. Wei Ci's face was cold. She was indeed very careful about the timing, but it didn't stop her from planting a seed of suspicion in Huang Song and the others. Chapter 1037. Nie Sun left angrily. The atmosphere in Huang Song's tent was a little awkward and boring. The anger in Yuan Xian's heart did not subside. Even his thick beard could not conceal the ridicule on his face. Nie Sun's appearance was too beautiful, and men were popular at the moment. Yuan Xian always felt that Nie Sun was not a decent person, and did not have a good impression of him. In addition, the most important point was that after Nie Sun came to Huang Song's camp, his contributions did not match the importance he was given. The Lord only thinks highly of him because he is Master Yuanjing's son-in-law. Yuan Xian was a somewhat crude and boorish fellow. He was convinced by Qing Jing and Feng Ju because these two gentlemen were indeed very talented. They had helped Huang Song conquer Haozhou and even spread his influence to other domains. They could be said to be true meritorious subjects. In comparison, Nie Sun was a little off. If Nie Sun was just an ordinary advisor, Yuan Xian wouldn't hate him so much. However, Nie Sun's contributions to the outside world were not great, but he was favored quite a lot. This made Yuan Xian have no choice but to think in the wrong direction. "Humph, you have quite a temper," Yuan Xian snorted coldly and gulped down the wine in his cup. The more he thought about it, the angrier he felt. Yuan Xian felt that it was not enough to drink like this, so he simply went to the wine jar and drank like a whale. His actions attracted the attention of others. Yuan Chong, who was sitting near him, advised in a low voice, "Uncle, we are in need of manpower now. Our lord still needs to rely on the military counselors. If you have a conflict with military counselor Nye at this time, won't it put our lord in a difficult position?" After hearing this, Yuan Xian put down his wine cup heavily. "What did I do to him?" Yuan Xian straightened his neck and said, "Didn't I just say a few words to him, and he became aggrieved? You're a man, why are you being so unreasonable?" Yuan Xian said whatever he wanted to say, but he didn't humiliate Nie Sun. Nie Sun actually threw his face at him. Thinking of this, the anger in Yuan Xian's heart seemed to have been doused with alcohol, burning more and more fiercely. "Uncle, you can't say that." Yuan Xian wasn't bad at fighting, but his personality was too straightforward and impulsive. He only spoke because he was happy and didn't care about the situation. Just now, when he teased Nie Sun, it was only because he thought so in his heart. There wasn't much malice in his words. But in Nie Sun's ears, these words were filled with malice. Who wouldn't be angry after hearing it? On one side was a useful general, who was also his uncle, and on the other side was a trusted advisor. It was quite difficult for Huang Song to be stuck in the middle. Yuan Chong still wanted to mediate, but Huang Song, who was sitting at the head of the table, couldn't stand it anymore. "Enough." Huang Song's face carried a hint of anger, which immediately subdued Yuan Xian. The latter lowered his head in embarrassment and drank his wine, not daring to lose his temper again. At the end of the banquet, Feng Ju and Qing Jing left one after another. The other strategists and generals also dispersed. Qing Jing took a few quick steps to catch up with Feng Ju. "Based on my understanding of Lu Shi, he is not a bad disciple who indulges in beauty." Feng Ju was not surprised by Qing Jing's appearance. He said in a low voice, "Of course she's not. Not only is she not, but she's also as cunning as a schemer." His second brother stayed behind in Wanzhou during the Beijiang campaign. "But now, you've brought second brother and Meng Han here. How can this be good intentions?" At the banquet, he saw his second brother, Feng Jin, whom he had not seen for many years. Although Feng Ju looked calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil. Meng Han used to be a military officer in Meng County in Tsang Prefecture. The Mengs of Tsang Prefecture caused him to lose his wife and daughter. It was reasonable for Jiang Pengji to bring Meng Han along. However, why did she specially bring Feng Jin here? Feng Ju did not dare to think too deeply. In fact, Feng Ju and Qing Jing thought too much of Jiang Pengji. If she was so evil, she would have dragged Qing Cheng and Qing Yuan along. Qing Cheng was Qing Jing's nephew, and Cheng Yuan was Cheng Jing's grandnephew. Cheng Jing frowned. Cheng Yun is from Zhongzhou. He has never been to Dongqing before this. It's impossible for him to have any interaction with Lu Shi. Feng Ju looked down. Don't forget, although Cheng Yun is from Zhongzhou, his ancestral bloodline is in Dongqing. Nie Sun's search for relatives was not a secret at all. Cheng Jing's eyebrows twitched violently. You mean Cheng Yun is related to Lu Shi? If that's the case, why would Cheng Yun hide it from us? They were certain that it was the first time Lu Shi and Nie Sun had met. If the two were related by blood, there was no reason that Lu Shi would know but Nie Sun did not. It's not that. Don't forget, Master Yuanjing is Cheng Yun's father-in-law. He's even a teacher in Lu Shi's territory. Feng Ju added coldly, TSK. No matter what he's up to, we have to be on guard. Jiang Pengji did things as she pleased. Although Huang Song had formed an alliance with her, the alliance was just a verbal one. There was no deep entanglement of interests. Without a certain entanglement of interests as a guarantee, such an alliance was too fragile. It was like a flower in the mirror or the moon in the water. Jiang Pengji flirted with Nie Sun at the banquet. This alerted the strategists in Huang Song's tent. The generals were still in a daze. As the initiator of this incident, Jiang Pengji did not make any further moves. It was as if she was really tempted by his lust. She did not have time to care about Nie Sun at that moment because she received an unexpected visitation card. Cousin Heng, I haven't seen you for many years. You're even more charming now. Jiang Pengji looked at Meng Heng. To be precise, it was the second time she had seen Meng Heng after transmigrating for so many years. Thinking of her cousin's experience, Jiang Pengji sympathized with him. Sympathy was sympathy, but if he stood on the opposite side of her, Jiang Pengji would not be soft-hearted. Meng Heng suddenly sat down. His posture was tall and straight. He was as elegant as bamboo and had a strong demeanor. Hearing Jiang Pengji's greeting, he laughed bitterly and said frankly, Cousin Shi, are you wondering why Heng is here? Jiang Pengji said, I am indeed a little puzzled. Cousin Heng is not in Cangzhou. Instead, when Meng Heng raised his head, she clearly saw that the whip mark on his face had not faded. The mark on his left eyelid was the deepest. As a son, it is not appropriate to talk about the elders. But what my father has done is indeed against the natural order. Heng only hopes to make up for it. Meng Heng got up from the banquet and walked to the center of the hall with heavy steps. He bowed deeply to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. Cousin Heng, you. He had never imagined that this cousin of his would actually join his side. What did Meng Zhan do to anger the heavens and the people? Meng Heng, who had a gentle and dignified personality, was forced to put righteousness before family. Cousin Shi, please grant my wish. Meng Heng bowed deeply again. How could Jiang Pengji not agree? Meng Heng's joining was like God's help. Apart from talent, Meng Heng was the Zongzi of the Mengs. Even if he was not favored, his understanding of Cangzhou was unparalleled. If Meng Zhan knew that Meng Heng had sided with her, would he still be able to keep his face? Cousin Heng, please get up. You're making me sick by doing this. Jiang Pengji stood up and helped Meng Heng up. She acted like a close sibling. She said with concern, but I am curious about one thing. Cousin Heng is the Zongzi of the Mengs. Why? Chapter 1038. Jiang Pengji listened attentively to Meng Heng's narration. She could not help but frown. She knew that Meng Heng wasn't treated well in Cangzhou, but she didn't expect his situation to be this bad. All of this had to start from Meng Heng's childhood. Back then, Gu Zhen could not even take care of herself, much less her eldest son. Gu Min and her husband took Gu Zhen away from the Meng residence and let Meng Zhan and Gu Zhen divorce, but they could not take Meng Heng away. Meng Heng struggled to live to the age of enlightenment. He did not live like a Zongzi. Instead, he lived like the most unfavored son of a concubine. From the age of 4 to 8, he felt that Meng Zhan's favorite concubine was looking at him more and more unfriendly. In order to escape from the persecution of his concubine, Meng Heng, who was only 8 years old, found a way out for himself. Late at night, he paid a visit to the teacher who taught at the family school. From the teacher, he obtained a letter of recommendation for Meng Heng to go to the Dongyang private school in Shangjing. Although it was said to be a student, it was actually a hostage. The Meng family of Zhangzhou held the lifeline of the horse farm in Dongqing. How could the emperor be at ease? He was constantly thinking of taking back control. Of course, the Meng family would not compromise. But if they did not, it would be hard to explain to the royal family. Meng Heng took advantage of this opportunity to go to Shangjing with the recommendation of the teacher. While studying, he also took the initiative to be a hostage to ease the conflict between the emperor and the Meng family. With this reason, Meng Heng also received the immunity medallion. No matter how much Meng Zhan's favorite concubine hated Meng Heng, she couldn't really kill him. Not long after Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin met, she heard news about Meng Heng from him. What had Feng Jin said about Meng Heng? If Meng Heng hadn't accidentally revealed his identity, many of his classmates wouldn't have known that Meng Heng, who lived a simple life, was actually the Zongzi of the Meng family in Tsang Prefecture. Other than returning to Zhangzhou for a few days during the new year, Meng Heng basically stayed in Shangjing to study. He stayed for 10 years. In the assessment 8 years ago, Meng Heng had wanted to enter the top 3 and become an official. In this way, he wouldn't have to worry about Meng Zhan's favorite concubine when he returned to the Mengs. Who knew that Meng Liang's scandal would be exposed, and the Meng county governor's office would be burned to the ground by Meng Han and his men. Then, the Tsang prefecture mutiny happened. How could this scandal be suppressed? As Meng Liang's eldest brother, Meng Heng was unfortunately affected and failed the test. Not to mention the top 3, Meng Heng couldn't even enter the top 100. After losing Meng Liang, the Meng family thought of him. More than a dozen letters to his family called him back. Meng Heng set off from Shangjing. On his way there, he met Jiang Pengji, who was on her way to Langya County. It was the first time the two cousins had met. Meng Heng, who had returned to the Mengs, felt as if his heart was being pricked by needles when he saw the no longer prosperous Zhangzhou and the tired and poor people. The Meng family of Zhangzhou used to be the guardian of the people of this land. Since when did the Meng family become the nightmare of the people and the demons who exploited them? Meng Heng tried to make amends and restore the reputation of the Mengs. However, the head of the family was Meng Zhan, and Meng Zhan did not like him at all. In this era where the patriarch was the king, Meng Heng's struggles and hard work were a joke. As a son, the only thing he could do was admonish him. He had tried many times, but the results were not ideal. He didn't know why, but Meng Zhan's attitude toward him was getting colder and colder. He could even see the deep hatred and murderous intent in Meng Zhan's eyes. To be honest, my lord, although Heng's ancestral hall was removed and his surname was removed, Meng Heng is Meng Heng. I dare not forget the teachings of my ancestors. Meng Heng said, if the Mengs of Zhangzhou are done for, it is also fate. I dare not have the slightest resentment. I only ask for my lord's grace. Jiang Pengji looked at Meng Heng and guessed his request. You want me to give you the surname Meng and keep the ancestral hall of the Mengs? Jiang Pengji could not understand the persistence of people in ancient times to pass on their surnames and bloodlines. Although she did not understand it, she respected it. Meng Heng's eyes flashed with surprise and joy. He bowed his head and said, I sincerely ask my lord to grant my wish. There were many people with the surname Meng in the world, but not all of them were from the Mengs of Zhangzhou. Take Wei Ci as an example. The Weis of Langyi were separated from Bianzhou in Zhongzhou and moved to Langyi to establish their own clan. Both were from the Weis, but when it came to their ancestors, one was from Bianzhou and the other from Langyi. Meng Heng planned to establish his own clan. When the time came, the Mengs of Cangzhou would be annihilated by Jiang Pengji, but the Mengs would not be completely wiped out because he would still be alive. Jiang Pengji would naturally agree to such a small request. Okay. I'll do as Cousin Heng says. Thank you, my lord. After discussing official matters, Jiang Pengji quietly changed the topic to Meng Heng's recent life. She asked him if he had any contact with the people under Huang Song's command. It was relatively easy for smart people to talk to smart people. Meng Heng immediately understood that Jiang Pengji wanted to poach him in private. But, Meng Heng said awkwardly, I don't have much contact with the people under Magistrate Huang's command. The only one I have a friendship with is Nye Chengyun. It was indeed Nye Sun. Jiang Pengji's heart flashed with a hint of understanding. Nye Sun really knew that he was Meng Heng's biological brother, but he had never acknowledged him. Jiang Pengji continued to fish for information. She learned from Meng Heng that Nye Sun had taken care of him these days. My lord, do you fancy Nye Chengyun? Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. We hit it off at first sight. Meng Heng had an idea. He whispered, Magistrate Huang is suspicious but calm. I'm afraid it's not feasible to sow discord. Jiang Pengji said, that's why I need Cousin Heng to do it. Nye Chengyun has taken care of Cousin Heng many times. Cousin Heng should return the favor. Nye Sun had taken care of Meng Heng many times. Meng Heng had a legitimate excuse to return the favor. Wouldn't the two families be closer if they kept in touch? When they were close to a certain extent, how could Huang Song not think too much about revealing their relationship as brothers? Jiang Pengji did not hesitate at all when she swung her hoe to poach her brother. Meng Heng sighed in his heart. Although it was not good to trick Nye Sun, both of them had their own masters. Heng obeys. On the second day after Jiang Pengji arrived in Heda County, the Meng's garrison troops stationed at Hanchang Pass could not remain calm. Huang Song is hard enough to deal with. Why is there another Lu Shi? The general on guard slammed the table with a thud. His expression was ferocious. The people below him kept quiet. General, we can attack Heda County and defend Hanchang Pass. There's no need to be afraid. The general on guard was worried. Who didn't know this? But that was Lu Shi. Lu Shi, who had just destroyed the entire northern borderline with his troops. When the soldiers guarding Hanchang Pass heard that Lu Shi had appeared among their enemies, their morale plummeted. This was what was worrying. If there was only Huang Song, they could still take the initiative to come out of the pass to fight and force the enemy to retreat to Heda County. Now that there was Lu Shi, who was like a wolf and a tiger, not to mention taking the initiative to attack, it was good enough that they did not cling to Hanchang Pass to defend it. Report this matter to the higher-ups as soon as possible and ask for a decision. The enemy is coming in menacingly. I'm afraid they won't be easy to deal with. The general on guard did not attack rashly. His mind was still very clear. The most important thing at the moment was to defend Hanchang Pass and wait patiently for instructions from the higher-ups. Chapter 1039. I really don't know what's there to discuss. Can't we just fight our way over? Yuan Xian lost his patience when he heard that there was no progress after an hour of discussion. No matter how we challenge them, those bastards from Cangzhou don't respond. They were all scared out of their wits, so why would they take the initiative to come out? If they don't want to fight, can't we fight them? Yuan Xian did not deliberately suppress his voice, so everyone in the tent could hear him. Huang Song looked embarrassed, and he looked a little embarrassed. The generals under his command were impulsive and reckless, which made him lose face as well. Moreover, Yuan Xian was his uncle from the same clan, so he had no choice but to help clean up after him. Jiang Pengji wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled and said, "That's true. The general guarding Hanchang Pass is afraid of the military strength of the two families, so he doesn't come out. They have the danger pass to rely on, so they naturally aren't afraid. But we can't afford to drag this on. However, the Great Cold Mountain Pass is easy to defend and hard to attack. If the two clans take the initiative to send out their troops, they will fall right into the enemy's trap. Who knows how much of a price they will have to pay to attack such a dangerous pass." Yuan Xian was secretly warned by Huang Song. He still felt a little guilty, but he didn't expect Jiang Pengji to stand up for him. However, even though Jiang Pengji tried to smooth things over, Yuan Xian did not stop while he was ahead. His personality was very stubborn, and he would not easily change his instincts. Yuan Xian did not have a good impression on Jiang Pengji. Even if she was magnanimous and forgave him, he would not be grateful. Instead, he felt that Jiang Pengji's temper was too soft and easy to manipulate. Yes, yes, yes. This was probably what it meant to be a kind person would be bullied and a kind horse would be ridden. For the sake of Huang Song, Jiang Pengji did not argue with Yuan Xian, but Yuan Xian refused to quit while he was ahead. He, who doesn't know these principles? Although I am old, I am not deaf. I still remember what the advisors have said. Yuan Xian said with some arrogance, though Cold Chang Pass is a dangerous pass that is easy to defend and hard to attack, it is not impregnable. To take down Hanchang Pass, we naturally have to rely on the hard work of the soldiers. We can't just rely on a few people moving their mouths and the Hanchang Pass will change hands. Although Jiang Pengji was fighting in an away game, Huang Song wanted to express his respect for her. The entire military meeting was led by Jiang Pengji. The strategists who spoke just now were basically people on Jiang Pengji's side. Yuan Xian's words were no different from a slap in the face. Huang Song's face darkened. He knew that this uncle of his had a bad temper, but he didn't expect him to go crazy regardless of the situation. Little did they know that Yuan Xian couldn't stand it either. Heda County was a territory under Huang Song's rule. Huang Song had to endure the indignation of allowing others to dictate what to do in his own territory and enjoy the limelight. Jiang Pengji smiled faintly and looked at Yuan Xian coldly. Yuan Xian felt a chill run down his spine under her gaze, as if an evil chill had spread from his feet to his brain, calming him down quite a bit. He thought that Jiang Pengji would fly into a rage, but she turned around and asked Huang Song. "Bogeo, can you introduce this warrior to me?" Huang Song's heart thumped, but he didn't dare to speak up for Yuan Xian. In this situation, he vaguely felt that he had returned to a few years ago. He was still shrouded in the shadow of Jiang Pengji's violence. He is Yuanxin, Song's uncle. He is loyal and upright, but his actions are a bit reckless and impulsive. He still needs more tempering. Jiang Pengji teased him with a smile. He has a good personality, but he offends people easily. Bogeo, you haven't had an easy time all these years. In her opinion, the Lord was like the head of a kindergarten. Her subordinates were all problematic children, and Yuan Xian was the one with the worst temper. It really hasn't been easy. Huang Song laughed bitterly and self-deprecatingly said, "I only hope that he hasn't offended Lanting too much." From such a familiar tone, everyone knew that the two of them were very close in private. Yuan Xian had offended so many people, but they could still talk and laugh. How could their relationship not be good? Jiang Pengji smiled and winked at Huang Song. "I wouldn't go so far as to offend him too much," Jiang Pengji said. In the past, the imperial court valued literature and restrained the military. How many men from the Wu family were like delicate, beautiful women? If the soldiers at the border were like Captain Yuan Xian, how would the motley crew of the northern borderline dare to attack the border? In her opinion, the civil officials were the brains and knees of the country, while the military generals were the backbone of the country. Both were equally important. She spent years training an army that was full of courage, but there were not many generals who satisfied her. Yuan Xian was indeed hot-tempered. If he hadn't offended her, Jiang Pengji would have admired him. Of course, she would get back at him for what he had done today. Huang Song secretly heaved a sigh of relief and followed Jiang Pengji's lead to divert the original topic. Yuan Xian felt like he had punched cotton. He didn't feel good. Throughout the meeting, he was somewhat silent. Without Yuan Xian's interruptions, everyone slowly came up with a clear battle plan. However, Yuan Xian's words still made them pay attention. The second half of the meeting was much quieter. The terrain of Hanchang Pass was treacherous. It seemed like one man could hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. It was definitely not advisable to attack by force. The Mengs, a formidable enemy, was still eyeing them. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song couldn't afford to lose too many soldiers at Hanchang Pass. After some discussion, everyone decided to lure the snake out of its hole. Since attacking by force was not advisable, they could only let the general in charge of Hanchang Pass lead his troops out of the pass. Then, they could take advantage of the fact that the pass was empty to launch a sneak attack. As he listened, Meng Hun vaguely felt that it was somewhat familiar. Back then, didn't the Lord and the others use this strategy to deal with General Fu? Meng Hun clearly remembered that the Lord and the others had tricked Fu Wang into leading his troops out of the pass. Then, they had taken the opportunity to break through Jiamen Pass. Feng Zhen said with a smile, "It doesn't matter if the strategy is new or old, as long as it works." Meng Hun secretly frowned. The general in charge of Hanchang Pass is timid and conservative. They would rather guard the pass than send troops out easily. If the battle dragged on, Jiang Pengji would be the one to suffer. After all, it was a long battle in an away game. The pressure on the transportation of grain was great. It couldn't withstand a long battle. As long as Huang Song and Jiang Pengji's alliance had problems, the Mengs in Cangzhou could find a chance to attack them one by one. "That's why we need to lure the snake out of its hole," Feng Zhen said. "It's the New Year's Day soon. What should we eat?" Meng Hun, was Feng Langzi possessed by Yangtze? The battle was more important. Why was he thinking about food? After a while, Meng Hun finally understood the deeper meaning of Feng Zhen's words. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song set up camp every day to challenge the enemy. Just as they had feared, the general in charge of Hanchang Pass was a coward. They weren't annoyed. Instead, they rewarded the troops with fat cattle, sheep, and fine wine. Every night, they lit a bonfire and sang and danced. The soldiers drank until they were drunk. Such a lively scene naturally couldn't escape the eyes of the scouts of Hanchang Pass. The soldiers on the city wall were all dumbfounded. "Don't be impatient. This is clearly their plan to lure the enemy. We can't fall for it." Chapter 1040. He was talking about luring the enemy, but he wasn't sure about it. If it was really a luring tactic, how could it be like this for half a month? Every morning, he received reports from scouts that Lu Shi's army and Huang Song's army had another night of fun. The general's mood was like a steamer. On one hand, he told himself that it was the enemy's luring tactic to lure them out of Hanchang Pass. On the other hand, he couldn't help but wonder, maybe it wasn't a luring tactic. Maybe the enemy was too arrogant? At first, he was still very vigilant and determined. However, as he missed the opportunity to annihilate the enemy again and again, he couldn't stay calm anymore. According to the reports from scouts, Huang Song's and Lu Shi's armies were partying all night, except for basic patrols. They weren't on guard at all. If he was braver and took the opportunity to launch a sneak attack, the enemy might have been wiped out. So what if it was bait set by the enemy? They were so drunk that they didn't have the strength to fight. If they launched a sneak attack, Lu Shi would be shooting himself in the foot. Faced with a dilemma, the general of Hanchang Pass was hesitant. He could only watch as the enemy camp burned brightly. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song predicted that the general of Hanchang Pass would be suspicious and wouldn't send troops easily. In order to put on a more realistic act and to let the soldiers relax and have a good new year, they had really gone crazy in the first few days. Ah! What a carefree and happy day. Feng Zhen was wearing a crown and a belt. He wore a lacquered gauze crown on his head. It was proper attire, but his waist was loose and his clothes were crooked, revealing his thin collarbone and a small part of his chest. He leaned against the table and sat casually. He held a wine cup in his hand and was drunk. His cheeks were red. Today was New Year's Eve. As usual, they had to gather for a New Year's banquet. It was a festive day, so they naturally had to wear formal clothes. Even Feng Zhen, the prodigal son, took out the clothes that he hadn't worn many times. If every day is a New Year's Eve, what regrets would there be in life? Feng Zhen sighed. His peach blossom eyes were filled with tears and seemed to be flowing. Feng Jin frowned and warned Feng Zhen in a low voice. Hanchang Pass can't wait any longer. They'll probably make a move soon. You should restrain yourself. At first, Feng Jin really didn't like this unruly colleague who risked his life to court death. But now, he let him be. She only hoped that he wouldn't make a fool of himself during the annual banquet. Feng Jin was also dressed in formal attire, but he and Feng Zhen were two completely different styles. If one were to say that Feng was a wanton man who indulged himself in the wilderness, then Feng Jin was a refined and courteous gentleman. The former's sitting posture was casual, while the latter's hair was neatly combed. New Year's banquet, burp. Feng Zhen burped and said drunkenly, "Didn't the Lord say that we should act freely and not be restrained?" Feng Jin resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Feng Zhen said slyly, bestowing the same full moon, "I wonder what's the situation on Wenjing and Zaidao's side?" When he thought about how he was enjoying himself while his colleague spent the holidays with a pile of bamboo slips, Feng Zhen felt his whole body relax. Feng Jin said with a headache, "You should stop." If he liked to attract hatred so much, sooner or later he would be beaten to death with a gunny sack. Feng Zhen smiled and pulled Li Yun, who was beside him. He said, "Han Mei, pour the wine. We won't go home until we're drunk tonight." It wasn't that there were no conflicts between the civil and military officials under Jiang Pengji's banner, but the conflicts weren't that obvious. Feng Longzi often hooked up with the military officials to drink in secret. Li Yun, the little angel, was humble and eager to learn. He often asked for guidance from a few teachers. With more communication, the estrangement and conflicts between them decreased. In addition, Jiang Pengji was skilled in both literature and martial arts. She tried her best to be fair and bring out the strengths of the civil and military officials. She didn't favor one and discriminate against the other. This made the overall atmosphere harmonious and the civil and military officials got along well. Even if there were conflicts between the two sides, most of them would be resolved in private and wouldn't be brought out in the open. Looking at the harmonious situation between the civil and military officials in the tent, Feng Ju, who was the messenger to Jiang Pengji, felt upset. Most of Huang Song's military officials were from the Yuanshi family. They were considered Huang Song's clansmen. The two had a close relationship. Although it was a good thing to not avoid enemies and not avoid relatives, the military officials under Huang Song seemed to have a tendency to unite and fight against outsiders. Under Huang Song's suppression, they didn't cause any trouble, but everything couldn't be compared. Feng Ju drank a few glasses of wine on behalf of Huang Song and Jiang Pengji. He said his New Year's greetings and left with the excuse that he couldn't hold his liquor. Seeing that, Feng Jin secretly informed Jiang Pengji and got up to follow him. Huijia, leaving the hot commander's tent, the cold wind and snow outside made Feng Jin shiver. Second brother. Feng Ju turned his head upon hearing the sound and called out respectfully. Sigh. Feng Jin sighed and said in a low voice, "We haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's find a place to have a drink or two and get together." Although they were brothers, they hadn't even exchanged many letters since they parted ways in Shangjing, let alone celebrate the New Year together. Feng Ju listened to his familiar tone and the corner of his mouth twitched. "Second brother, I thought you didn't like to drink?" He didn't usually touch alcohol, but now he was telling him to find a place to compete in drinking? Was his second brother possessed by a wandering ghost? Feng Jin pursed his lips and said helplessly, "I didn't like to drink in the past, but I have to train my tolerance." The Lord and a group of colleagues were all alcoholics and would drink at every banquet. Feng Jin couldn't possibly be unique and use tea as a substitute for alcohol, right? The two brothers found a place to drink. They set up a warming cauldron and arranged the sauce. The cold wind was blowing outside, and the small hot pot was boiling. The meat slices and dry goods that were thrown in were quickly cooked. Although they were alone, Feng Jin and Feng Ju did not talk about work. They just gathered together to reminisce about their youth. "If you have time, remember to write a letter to father and mother," Feng Jin said. "When you left without saying a word, father almost fainted from anger." Feng Ju nodded. For a moment, he was filled with warmth. It was as if the cauldron in front of him was warming his heart and body. Apart from the Feng brothers, Meng Heng was also sent by Jiang Pengji to visit Huang Song as a messenger. Huang Song asked him to stay for a simple meal, and Meng Heng went to Nie Sun's place. This time, Meng Heng even brought his wife, who had a protruding abdomen. It's easy to add flowers to embroidery, but difficult to provide timely assistance. If it weren't for brother Sun and sister-in-law's help, my wife might not have been able to keep her pregnancy. Meng Heng did not talk about work. He only mentioned the help that Nie Sun and his wife had given them. Now that it was the new year, they naturally had to send generous gifts to Nie Sun and his wife. Otherwise, would they not be ingrates? This was a personal relationship. Nie Sun had no excuse to reject Meng Heng and his wife's goodwill. If there was a first, there would be a second. It was a good start, and it would be convenient for them to come and go in the future. After a simple meal, Meng Heng carefully helped his wife into the carriage and let the coachman drive the carriage away. Although Meng Heng was a gentleman also had a mind. He deliberately let the carriage drive slowly and passed by Yuan Xian's residence. He just happened to pass by Yuan Xian, who had just returned drunk. Yuan Xian's whole body was steaming. He burped and his eyes were drunk. Humph. Nie Sun. Burp. This child. He's close to Lu Shi. Burp. Chapter 1041. Listening to the sound of the wheels turning, Meng Heng sighed softly. Everyone had their own masters and couldn't help themselves. After everything was settled, he had to seriously apologize to Nie Sun. Right now, he could only harden his heart and bury Nie Sun. Meng Heng and his wife didn't deliberately avoid spies, so this matter quickly reached Huang Song's ears. Cheng Yun and Meng Heng hit it off very well. Huang Song chuckled. He turned to Madame Qi sitting next to him and said, "Considering the time, Madame Cheng Yun's baby isn't small anymore. When she's about to give birth, the war will probably be at its fiercest. The current situation is turbulent and war is on the verge of breaking out. Cheng Yun probably won't be able to stay by his wife's side and wait for Lin to be born. Furthermore, Cheng Yun doesn't have any elders at home, and it's his first time being a father, so he's definitely feeling uneasy. To make Cheng Yun feel at ease, please take care of Madame Chengyun." Madame Qi's lips curled up and she rolled her eyes at Huang Song. "Lang Jun, are you sure I won't anger Madame Nia into miscarriage if I go take care of her?" Huang Song was dumbfounded and berated her in a low voice. "You're staying up on New Year's Eve. What inauspicious words are you saying?" If Nia Sun heard this, he would think Huang Song and his wife were sinister. Madame Qi held her sleeping youngest son in her left hand and stroked her eldest son's soft hair with her right hand. She rolled her eyes at Huang Song. "I heard Madame Nia is very meticulous. You sent several beauties to Mr. Nia while she was pregnant. If I go, who knows what he'll think? What woman would like to see someone who liked to send concubines to their man?" Many of Huang Song's officials were married, and the wives of various families visited each other. Only Madame Nia Sun was cold. Why was she cold? Wasn't it because Huang Song had repeatedly sent beauties offered by others to Nia Sun's house and angered his legal wife? Huang Song was speechless. He sent beauties for Nia Sun's own good. His wife was pregnant and couldn't move, but a man's physical needs had to be taken care of. Huang Song was like most ancient men. His wife was his wife, and his concubines were just playthings used to vent his physical needs. He couldn't take concubines, but that didn't stop his officials from having 3 or 4 wives. Madame Qi saw through his thoughts and sneered coldly. Huang Song subconsciously shrank his neck. "The children are here, at least give me some face." Ever since the incident last time, Huang Song had become fond of this madam. Lady Qi was too lazy to pay attention to him and concentrated on coaxing her sleepy eldest son. "I'll help you take care of Madame Nia, but don't foolishly send beauties to other couples lest they hold a grudge against me." He heard that Madame Nia was Yuanjing's beloved daughter. Although she wasn't born into a family of generals, she had a temper. Why would she like to share a man with another woman? If you don't change, there's no harm in thinking about that one from the Huai family. Others learn from their mistakes, but you never learn from them. Madame Qi was a woman, and women understood women the best. Madame Nia rarely interacted with her and always used the excuse that she wasn't feeling well as an excuse to excuse herself. Wasn't it all because Huang Song's actions angered her? At the mention of Madame Fengjue, Huang Song pursed his lips tightly, his eyes filled with accusation. He and Feng Ju were not only emperor and minister, but also close friends who wore the same pants. The Feng family did not arrange for Feng Ju's marriage, but Huang Song, as half a brother, could not ignore it. He had wanted to choose a virtuous and gentle wife for her, but he did not expect his wife to be the one he had chosen. Sigh. It was a long story. Feng Ju made a great contribution, so Huang Song was happy and sent him a pair of rare twin beauties. The aristocrats who fawned on him spent a lot of effort to buy these twin beauties and carefully trained them. Worried that Feng Ju would be too shy to accept them, Huang Song specially ordered someone to send them to his residence. In the end, he even had someone warn Madame Fengjue. The legal wife must be magnanimous and not hold her husband back from taking concubines. The twin beauties were 16 or 16 years old. Their faces were full of collagen, and their appearance was full of life. Even if the male master did not use them, they would still be very pleasing to the eyes as decorations at home. Huang Song was just that considerate of his subordinates. And then, Feng Ju was chased out by his wife. Not only that, but Madame Fengjue also stripped the 2 girls naked and threw them into Huang Song's backyard. No matter how good Huang Song's temper was, there was a limit to it. He immediately flew into a rage and wanted to punish Madame Fengjue. If he did not discipline this woman for Fengjue, wouldn't she go to heaven in the future? Madame Fengjue's temper was the complete opposite of her looks. She was usually quiet, but once she got angry, she could really climb the roof and flip the beams. Madame Fengjue was a tough nut to crack. She said to Huang Song calmly, "I heard that when the emperor is angry, millions of corpses will be laid. When the feudal lords are angry, blood will flow. I don't have such great abilities, but the hatred of stealing my husband is absolutely irreconcilable. Taking a head within 30 feet is also as easy as taking something from my pocket. Huang Song was speechless. The hatred of stealing her husband? Don't say that he and Feng Jue had some shameful relationship, okay? He did not do anything. Didn't he just send Feng Jue 2 beauties? How could this be considered the hatred of stealing her husband? Huang Song was angry and furious. What about taking a head within 30 feet? Wasn't that just a threat? What's the matter? I sent a beauty to help her take care of Wuxia. Why is this woman so stubborn? Huang Song was angry, but Feng Jue pleaded for mercy for his wife. Huang Song could not ignore Feng Jue and really kill Feng Jue's wife. In the end, he could only swallow the bitter pill back into his stomach. You can only blame Lanting. If she was a man, these little women in the backyard wouldn't be so arrogant. She's not even willing to let her husband take a concubine. What kind of logic is this? Which man out there doesn't have a sweetheart who can add fragrance to their sleeves? Madame Qi sneered, and Huang Song was instantly silenced. Jiang Pengji's appearance gave Madame Qi, who came from a family of generals, confidence. Madame Qi was also in charge of Huang Song, which indirectly gave the wives of Huang Song's counselors confidence. The lord was henpecked, and most of the officials would also be henpecked. This was the example of the superior following the subordinate's example. However, henpecked and chaste men were in the minority. Most men still like to have a large number of wives and concubines. For men, money, power, and women were eternal pursuits. Therefore, Huang Song's habit of sending beauties did not get rid of it. If he could not send them to Feng Jue to add color to his backyard, he could send them to others. Nie Sun was implicated just like that. It was just that, Huang Song thought of Nie Sun's inexplicable closeness to Meng Heng, and he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. He asked Madame Qi to take care of Nie Sun's wife. Caring for her subordinates was one thing, and the other was to alienate Nie Sun from Meng Heng. Madame Qi kept watch until midnight and fell into a deep sleep. Huang Song drank lightly under the moon and murmured. Lanting has too many crafty ideas. I have to be on guard. Huang Song had seen Jiang Pengji's ability to create something out of nothing. He was afraid that Nie Sun would fall into her trap. At the end of the night, the sky was bright. The bonfire from last night had been extinguished. White smoke rose in spirals, giving off a sense of desolation. Chapter 1042. Jiang Pengji ran a few laps with her beloved White and her pretty boy. She was drenched in sweat and her cheeks were red. Your Highness, quickly put it on. Wei Ci frowned and lifted his hand to put the cloak on Jiang Pengji, who had just returned. He was drenched in sweat and had to stay outside in the cold wind. Even if his body was made of iron, he couldn't stand it. Jiang Pengji obediently allowed Wei Ci to drape the cloak over her. Has my lord eaten breakfast? No, I just took Big White and Little White to exercise, so my stomach is empty now. Did you bring anything in your sleeves, Zixiao? The clothes of the ancients did not have pockets. After all, those things were not elegant. Instead, they liked to make a fuss in the wide sleeves, which could hide a lot of things. Jiang Pengji's nose was sensitive. She immediately smelled the fragrance of meat in Wei Ci's sleeve. Wei Ci could not help but laugh. He took out a few meat buns wrapped in special oiled paper. There is still a pot of meat porridge and chopped pickled vegetables in the tent. If my lord is still hungry, I will prepare more. Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. The meat buns puffed up her cheeks. Zixiao is becoming more and more virtuous. After saying this, she immediately asked, is there any news from the scouts? Wei Ci could not be bothered with anything else the moment he asked about official business. There are signs of the soldiers guarding Hanchang Pass being mobilized. I reckon that there will be movements in the near future. Wei Ci said, the patience of the defending general is not bad. He has persisted for more than 20 days. If they continue to delay, our army will easily fall into a passive situation. No matter how popular Jiang Pengji was, it could not change the fact that she was a long-distance fighter. Otherwise, why would Jiang Pengji set up a field station in Chongzhou when she attacked the northern borderline? It was all for the sake of shortening the transportation line. The longer the supply line, the more food would be consumed. Not to mention the greater the risk, the military expenditure would also increase exponentially. The tens of thousands of mouths under Jiang Pengji had to eat. It was a terrifying number in one day, let alone 20 days. No matter who they are, they all have the mentality of a gambler. The difference is in who is more serious, Jiang Pengji said. The camp security has been lax for more than 20 days. At first, the defending general of Cold Chang Pass suspected that it was a ploy to lure the enemy, but as time went on, his heart began to waver. As long as he grasped this opportunity, he would be able to make a great contribution. Unfortunately, he was timid and stopped moving forward, missing one opportunity after another. As time goes by, even the most cautious person will have the mentality of fighting to the death, and gamble fiercely. In the words of the live stream viewers, take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. Everything has to be tried. Who knows, you might win. Jiang Pengji's strategy was psychological warfare, luring the enemy to lead his troops out of seclusion. It was only at this time that the defenses of Cold Chang Pass were at their weakest, and the losses from breaching the pass could be minimized. It wasn't that Jiang Pengji didn't have the confidence to break through the pass head-on, but the casualties were too great. She didn't want the soldiers to sacrifice themselves for Hanchang Pass. It didn't matter if more food was consumed, as long as fewer people died. After eating breakfast and drinking a pot of meat porridge, Jiang Pengji finally felt better. The new year had a new atmosphere, and the military camp still had remnants of the festive atmosphere from the new year. However, it was different over at Cold Chang Pass. Cold Chang Pass did not lack grain, but the garrison general was a stingy person. Why would he squander his wealth to feed the soldiers for the new year? Last night, on New Year's Eve, the soldiers guarding Cold Chang Pass could only stare at the orange bonfires in the distance. It was as if they could smell the mouth-watering smell of roasted meat and fine wine from afar. Others had a joyous new year, but they had to spend the whole night drinking northwest wind at the city walls. The enemy had challenged them for more than 20 days, but the general was still unwilling to fight. The morale of the soldiers at Cold Chang Pass was also affected. The garrison general of Cold Chang Pass hesitated for so many days, and he finally made up his mind to take a gamble. The generals under him complained incessantly. Not only did it affect the overall morale, but it also caused his reputation in the army to plummet. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji's camp was loose and undisciplined. If they seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack, they would definitely reap great rewards. However, the garrison general insisted on doing things his own way, and he missed one good opportunity after another. The onlookers were furious. The garrison general was originally hesitant. Now that he was egged on by his subordinates, the balance in his heart slowly tilted. Take a gamble. Perhaps the bicycle would turn into a motorcycle. Gritting his teeth and steeling his heart, the garrison general of Cold Chang Pass made the decision to mobilize the troops. Once the order was issued, the originally low morale immediately rose. They wished they could grow wings and fight to the death with the enemy. Little did they know that their actions of mobilizing the troops were all seen by the cavalry scouts. Finally, I can't sit still anymore. Li Yun had been stifled these days. He felt too tired when he was busy everywhere, but once he was free to eat and enjoy, he felt uncomfortable all over, as if he had nowhere to vent his energy. Now that he could finally fight, it felt great. Huang Song, who received the news, also could not sit still. As long as they successfully broke through Cold Chang Pass and crossed the treacherous river Song, they could directly enter the hinterland of Zhangzhou. Jiang Pengji reminded him, act according to the plan, remember not to leak any information. Huang Song knew the severity of the matter, and he nodded with a solemn face. The garrison general of Cold Chang Pass chose the first day of the new year, which was the night of the first day. As usual, the two camps lit up with raging bonfires. The security of the camp was lax, and the distribution of the tents was even more messy. Anyone with a bit of experience would know that such tents were a failure. Once there was a surprise attack, the messenger would not be able to immediately inform the entire camp, let alone organize an effective counterattack. The garrison general of Cold Chang Pass was still a little uneasy, but when he saw the messy camp with his own eyes, he sneered coldly in his heart. If he had known that Lu Shi only had this little ability, why would he be so jittery for so long? Sighing in his heart, the garrison general of Cold Chang Pass gathered his unnecessary thoughts and led the troops towards the enemy's camp. Lu Shi, that's all there is to him, I knew he didn't have the ability, the garrison general of Cold Chang Pass murmured in a low voice. His face was filled with obvious regret. Little did he know that no matter when he launched a sneak attack, the seemingly loose camp hid an ambush that he would not be able to return from. Although Jiang Pengji was confident, this confidence was built on a sufficiently strong foundation. For the past 20 days, it seemed like the entire camp was having fun, but in fact, most of the troops were hidden in the tents, ready for battle. In order to keep the troops in peak condition, she even arranged for them to work in 3 shifts and take turns to put on a show. For example, the camp looked relaxed on the surface, but most of the troops were hidden in the tents, lying in ambush, waiting for the heir to come to them. The garrison general of Cold Chang Pass led 5,000 troops to launch a sneak attack. Although it was said to be a sneak attack, they planned to leave after the battle. However, would the troops, who had been in drought for so long, let them retreat unscathed? Just as the garrison general of Cold Chang Pass was about to step into the trap, Jiang Pengji and the others led the troops to take a shortcut and went straight to the foot of Cold Chang Pass. Ah Wu, yawning sleepily, the troops on the top of the city wall rubbed their eyes with their hands. It was the middle of the night, and they were very sleepy, yawning non-stop. What movement? Chapter 1043. What's going on? Don't scare yourselves in the middle of the night. Hearing this voice, the soldier's companion was startled. His sleepiness faded a little, and he rushed over with more vigor. He yawned and squeezed out 2 drops of tears from the corner of his eyes to relieve his sore eyeballs. But I really heard it. The soldier opened his eyes wide and looked down at the city. It was dark all around, except for the bonfire in the enemy's camp in the distance, which added a little color to the night. That's weird. Did I really hear it wrong? The soldier scratched his bun that hadn't been washed for a long time. His fingers pulled out a layer of sticky dandruff and he rubbed it on his clothes. Maybe. I really heard it wrong. His companion rubbed his arms, trying to warm himself up a little. It's so cold in this damn weather. I really don't know when it will end. The soldiers at the bottom had no human rights. They did the most tiring work and received the lowest pay. Most of the time, they didn't even have enough to eat or wear. If everyone was like this, such treatment wouldn't be very uncomfortable. It was good enough to survive in this chaotic world. However, Lu Shi and Huang Song's camp was very lively. They drank and barbecued at night. They were happier than immortals. Everyone was cannon fodder in this chaotic world. Why did others eat and drink well, while he had to endure hunger? There was no harm without comparison. Every time he thought of this, his already hungry stomach became even hungrier. He was so hungry that it was difficult for him to even speak. Buddy, I'm going to take a nap. Call me if anything happens. I'm so hungry, hey. What can happen at this time? Just take a nap. I'll call you when the sun rises. Lu Shi and Huang Song's camp only cared about eating, drinking, and playing. It was like this for more than 20 days. It was the middle of the night. There was not even a shadow, not to mention the wind blowing the grass. The tired soldiers leaned against the battlements and slept soundly, hoping that sleep could warm their bodies and save their energy. The soldiers at Hanchang Pass yawned continuously. Their consciousness became more and more blurry, and their eyelids became heavy as if they were filled with lead water. The cold wind blew, and the snowflakes falling from the sky were rolled up and deviated from their original trajectory. On this ordinary night, an arrow streaked across the night sky, emitting a buzzing sound as it left the bowstring. The sharp blade pierced into flesh and blood. The soldier who had just seen the Duke of Zhou suddenly opened his eyes wide. An unprecedented chill wrapped around him, as if his body had sunk into a 1,000-year cold pond. He tried to open his mouth, but no sound came out of his throat. It was as if the whole world had gone silent. In a breath's time, the remaining warmth in his body was cruelly stripped away by an invisible force. It hurts, it's so cold, a brief thought flashed through his mind, and the scene in front of him fell into endless darkness. In a trance, he seemed to hear his companion shouting at the top of his lungs, saying, "Enemy attack." By the end of the first wave of arrows, more than half of the city guards had been killed, and the rest were either dead or injured. Get on the ladders. Archers, continue firing. Are the siege weapons ready? After clearing up a wave of enemy soldiers, he took advantage of the fact that there were fewer guards at the gates of Cold Chang Pass. At this moment, he had to seize the time to build a scaling ladder and climb up the walls. Jiang Pengji led the vanguard troops, each of them wearing a white cloth. Under the cover of the snow and the night, they quickly made their way to Hanchang Pass. The general guarding Hanchang Pass had led his troops to launch a sneak attack on the main camp. It would be impolite not to reciprocate. Jiang Pengji naturally had to retaliate. What was a sneak attack? A sudden attack when the enemy was unprepared. Not only did it pay attention to the element of surprise, but it also paid attention to speed, launching a fierce attack when the enemy was unprepared. The terrain of Hanchang Pass was strategic. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. So what? No one could defend the pass she wanted to break through. Jiang Pengji's attack was sudden. In a face-to-face confrontation, a wave of soldiers on the city wall died, and the rest were wounded. Some people tried to fight back, some shouted "enemy attack," and some gritted their teeth. Their blood-stained fingers trembled as they pulled the bowstring and used the last of their strength to shoot a whistling arrow into the sky. As soon as the whistling arrow was shot, the entire Hanchang Pass seemed to have welcomed a tremor. The soldiers were in an uproar. They did not expect the enemy to launch a sneak attack at this time. However, the urgent matter was to send more troops to the city wall and guard the pass of Hanchang Pass. They must not let the enemy break through. Enemy attack, quick. In the middle of the night, many people had already entered a sweet dream. They had no choice but to sleep. They were cold and hungry. If they did not sleep, they might not be able to sleep due to hunger. When the movement outside was heard, many people reluctantly left their dreams. They threw down the thin blankets that were tightly wrapped around them and rushed out of the tent. The cold wind blew, blowing away the remaining warmth that lingered around them. Many people were so cold that they shivered. Their dazed minds instantly became clear. How could Jiang Pengji give them the chance to increase their troops? The archers lying in ambush in the snow were divided into 3 rows. After the first row finished shooting, the second row followed. When the third row finished shooting, the first row had already knocked their arrows and pulled their bows, aiming in the right direction. With this simple tactic, the archers could maintain a continuous rain of arrows falling on the city wall of Hanchang Pass. With the archers' cover, the scaling ladders were quickly pushed toward the city wall of Hanchang Pass. The vanguard troops began to attempt to rush the wall and attack. However, Hanchang Pass was called a dangerous pass because it naturally had its geographical advantages. The soldiers guarding Hanchang Pass were caught unprepared. The rapid attack almost made them unable to react. Of course, this was only temporary. When they reacted, they immediately used the terrain to counterattack. Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes. Her dark eyes stared closely at the city wall of Hanchang Pass. The road ahead of Hanchang Pass was not smooth. The terrain was steep and narrow. It was not conducive for the use of siege weapons. If Jiang Pengji's siege ladders were not specially made, they would not be of much use. When the time came, they could only use the most primitive human flesh tactic and rely on huge casualties to force their way up the wall. However, they could still use the scaling ladders and use bows and arrows to open the way. Hanchang Pass was not as tricky as imagined. Jiang Pengji turned on the live stream during the battle. 850,000 night owls squatted in the live stream room to accompany her. As they fought, the audience realized that there was something wrong with the soldiers guarding Hanchang Pass. Fengqi Wutong, did you notice that the enemy's combat power is a little weak? Guishui Bupeng, I don't think they are weak. It's obvious that our streamer is too strong. Piaoliu Feishu, they are indeed a little weak. If this situation continues, the streamer will definitely break through the pass in at most an hour. I zoomed in and found that the soldiers guarding the pass were a little old. They did not look very energetic. It was as if there were no strong young men in the entire army. The careless audience only watched the killing on the battlefield. They watched in the middle of the night with their blood boiling and excitement. However, the attentive audience realized that the enemy's combat power was different from what they had imagined. They occupied a dangerous pass, but they were still brutally beaten by Jiang Pengji. They were puzzled, but Jiang Pengji was well aware of it. It was not that the combat power of the soldiers guarding Hanchang Pass was not high. It was clear that in order to succeed in the sneak attack, the general guarding the pass selected all the elites. According to the general's understanding of Hanchang Pass, even if the remaining soldiers were not as strong as the elites, they could still defend the pass by relying on the steep terrain. Chapter 1044. Jiang Pengji listened to the shouts and counted the time. She seemed to have thought of something and her lips curled into a faint smile. Captain Meng's side is almost ready, right? Jiang Pengji brought 15,000 men and Huang Song allocated 15,000 for the sneak attack on Hanchang Pass. Jiang Pengji led 1,000 elites and went ahead first. She consulted the guards on the walls of Hanchang Pass and tried to delay as much time as possible. The follow-up army followed closely, further pressuring Hanchang Pass. It was the first time the two armies had cooperated, so it was inevitable that there were areas where they did not cooperate properly. To avoid holding each other back, Huang Song generously handed over his command and let his army cooperate with Jiang Pengji's. Cheng Jing followed the army as a strategist and listened to Jiang Pengji's orders. He looked at the improved scaling ladders that Jiang Pengji's army took out and the cooperation of the archers. A strange look flashed across his dark eyes. Cheng Jing said, looking at the time, it should be about time. At the same time, the general guarding Hanchang Pass led his troops to attack the main camps of the two armies. However, when the soldiers heard the shouts, not only did they not go forward to fight, but they picked up their weapons and fled in all directions, leaving only two empty camps. The general guarding Hanchang Pass widened his eyes in shock. He angrily opened a few tents, but there was no one inside. We've been tricked. Watch out for an ambush. The general guarding Hanchang Pass's heart skipped a beat. He immediately ordered the army to turn around and return to support. He originally thought that the enemy would set up an ambush outside the empty camp and launch a sneak attack when he led his troops into the camp. Who knew that even when the general guarding Hanchang Pass left the empty camp with his troops, the expected sneak attack still did not happen. Thinking of this, the general guarding Hanchang Pass felt a chill in his heart. An idea popped into his mind. Lu Shi and Huang Song used all their troops in an attempt to attack Hanchang Pass. Although Hanchang Pass was easy to defend and difficult to attack, the combined forces of the Huang and Lu families were huge. If they attacked without any regard for anything, Hanchang Pass could not be defended. Quickly return to support. If they returned to support now and the enemy had not conquered Hanchang Pass, then he could lead his troops to attack the rear and prevent the enemy from taking care of both the front and the rear. The general guarding Hanchang Pass hurriedly led his troops back to support. He only cared about arriving at the battlefield as soon as possible and did not care about concealing himself. When they came, they were very careful and hurried. When they left, they wished that their parents had given them more legs and a pair of wings. Because they were in a hurry, the army's formation became more and more disorganized. Less than a quarter of an hour's journey from Cold Chang Pass, the defending general of Cold Chang Pass could already see the smoke rising from the city walls, and he grew increasingly anxious. That was when the unforeseen event happened. In the darkness of the night, arrows tore through the air, bringing with them a strong gust of wind as they flew towards the army, killing and injuring countless soldiers. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The commander of Evercold Pass charged at the very front. He was also the first to discover the ambush. Although he didn't die, his shoulder was shot by a stray arrow. The sharp arrowhead was embedded in his bone joint, and the pain made his eyeballs almost pop out of their sockets. Get into formation and face the enemy. He had never expected that the enemy would not set up an ambush in the empty camp, but instead set up an ambush on the road. If they set up an ambush in an empty camp, the general in charge of guarding Cold Chang Pass would still be on tenterhooks. The army's formation would not be scattered, so a sneak attack would not be very effective. What about now? They were eager to return and the army only cared about rushing back, so they didn't notice that the army's formation was in disarray. Meng Han led his troops and set up an ambush along the way, intercepting and killing the returning reinforcements of Cold Chang Pass. The two armies formed an alliance, and Meng Han also had Huang Song's troops on his side. However, they did not hand over command, and instead fought on their own. Huang Song's family had many generals, and although this old general, Yuan Xian, was old, he fought bravely and fiercely. Other than him, the other generals of the Yuan clan also performed well, killing the enemy bravely. Meng Han did not rush for quick success, and instead commanded the army to surround and kill the enemy. Meng Han and Fu Wang's commanding styles were different. Fu Wang was a fierce wild wolf. Whether it was attacking or defending, he exuded a frightening ruthlessness. Meng Han was different. He didn't care about merits and achievements, and pursued the greatest rewards with the least sacrifices. In other words, Fu Wang was a sharp blade, and Meng Han was a thick shield. Yuan Xian's eyes were red from killing, and his body was covered in the enemy's blood. He couldn't even remember how many heads he had chopped off. Yeah, Yuan Xian spat and yelled, using brute force to block the enemy's attacks, forcing them to retreat. He killed his way, and the ground on both sides was littered with corpses. Only when most of the enemies were killed did Yuan Xian resentfully stop. He hadn't killed enough, his eyes were red, and he reluctantly put away the weapon that had harvested countless heads. He glanced at Meng Han from the corner of his eye, and he secretly spat on the ground, his eyes full of disdain. Why? Meng Han had only killed a few people so far, and they were the heads that Meng Han picked up after the enemy was defeated. His armor was clean. Did he look like a general who charged into the battlefield? TSK, "You're not good at fighting, but you're good at commanding people with a glib tongue," Yuan Xian muttered and glanced at Meng Hun disdainfully. Meng Hun joined Jiang Pengji's camp, and he spent most of his time training the troops. Almost every batch of recruits had been tortured by him, so Meng Hun had a high prestige in Jiang Pengji's camp. However, because he didn't have any outstanding achievements, Meng Hun's reputation wasn't that great. Now that he was on the battlefield, he hadn't killed many people, his weapons were not stained with much blood, and his armor was clean. How was that appropriate? For a general, the enemy's heads and the scars on his body were the real merits. Yuan Xian didn't hide his dissatisfaction, and Nie Sun, who was ordered to supervise the troops, saw it. "Captain Yuan, now that the two armies are cooperating, you can't." Before Nie Sun could finish, Yuan Xian looked straight ahead, bumped Nie Sun's shoulder, and walked away, refusing to listen to him. The two passed each other, and Yuan Xian said in a hoarse voice, "Humph, this is my business." "Humph. Why do you care about this old man's business? Who is Lu Shi? Does he need you to flatter him like this?" In Yuan Xian's eyes, Meng Hun's performance was mediocre. It was a disgrace for Yuan Xian to let such a person hold the military power. Nie Sun didn't stand on the same side as him, but he even helped Meng Hun. It was unreasonable. Thinking of this, Yuan Xian thought of Nie Sun and Meng Hun, who was under Jiang Pengji's camp. Yuan Xian's eyes darkened, and he snorted. He didn't trust Nie Sun, and now he was even more suspicious. Nie Sun was wearing a scholar's robe, and Yuan Xian was wearing heavy armor. The latter's bump hurt Nie Sun's left shoulder, and it was probably going to bruise. Yuan Xian left without looking back. He didn't even leave an apology. His attitude was terrible. Nie Sun's pretty face turned ugly for a moment. Yuan Xian used his seniority to flaunt his seniority in front of his lord, but he didn't even look at the situation of the battle. He was so stupid. For the sake of the big picture, he swallowed his anger and temporarily put this episode to the back of his mind. Meng Hun looked up at the sky and calculated the time in his heart. He led the troops to Hanchang Pass according to plan. Although the defending general of Hanchang Pass had taken away the elites, there were still about 20,000 soldiers left to guard the pass. Chapter 1045. It turned out that Meng Hun had underestimated his lord. There were only wrong names, but there were no wrong nicknames. What is Jiang Pengji's nickname? The 850,000 viewers in the live stream channel unanimously agreed, the humanoid battlefield was a killing machine. Give her an invincible machete, and she could destroy a battle fortress by herself. She was so strong that she didn't seem like a human. The terrain of Cold Chang Pass was steep, easy to defend and hard to attack. The soldiers didn't have many points to focus on, so it was difficult for them to charge or retreat. The enemy occupied the advantage of the checkpoint and gradually recovered from their disadvantage. The battlefield seemed dangerous, but Cold Chang Pass was still impregnable and unshakable. "My lord, we can't go on like this. Although the troops used ladders to climb up the city walls, the walls are narrow and it is not easy to get into formation." The walls of Cold Chang Pass were narrow and there were too few places for the soldiers to stand. The number of soldiers that could scale the walls at the same time was not large. The enemy was different. They climbed the wall from behind the pass, and the terrain was more open. They could completely rely on their advantage in numbers to repel the people who climbed the wall. Looking at the corpses of their people falling from the city walls, not only did Feng Zhen's expression turn ugly, but Jiang Pengji's expression also turned gloomy. If it was an ordinary city, once the city walls were lost, the outcome of the battle would have been decided. However, there was naturally a reason why Changhan Pass was known as one of Tsang Prefecture's 3 natural barriers. If it were so easy to break through, the Meng family that occupied Tsangzhou wouldn't have been able to stand firm for hundreds of years. Jiang Pengji decisively ordered, Zhi, order the soldiers on the city wall to retreat. If they continued to waste time like this, their losses would only increase. It would be a meaningless sacrifice, and it was not worth it. Feng Zhen's expression changed drastically, and a look of struggle flashed across his eyes. But after a moment, his eyes turned resolute. This subject obeys. No. Cheng Jing stopped Feng Zhen. He gritted his teeth and said, if we retreat now, our morale will plummet and we won't be able to break through. As you can see, even though we've occupied the city walls, we still haven't shaken the enemy's defensive line. Why would I send my soldiers to their deaths by climbing the wall? Jiang Pengji said coldly to Cheng Jing. I'm going to take down Hanchang Pass today. Cheng Jing said coldly. Jiang Pengji was very decisive. Once she made up her mind, there was no turning back. She was indecisive. I am the commander of the vanguard. Jiang Pengji's attitude was firm. She did not allow others to resist. The battlefield was ever-changing. If the order was delayed, even if it was only for a minute or a second, there would still be innocent soldiers paying with their lives. Jiang Pengji revealed her identity. Cheng Jing could only cup his hands and bow. With a heavy heart, he chose to obey. Even though Jiang Pengji was not Cheng Jing's lord, as he had said, Jiang Pengji was the commander of the vanguard troops. On the battlefield, the commander-in-chief's orders were above everything else. Jiang Pengji ordered for the attack to be abandoned. The soldiers who had already climbed the wall could only retreat as they fought, giving up the victory that they had obtained with great difficulty. After years of training, the troops under Jiang Pengji's tent could be absolutely obedient, so it did not affect their morale much. In comparison, the performance of the soldiers sent by Huang Song was slightly inferior. Their originally high-spirited morale was greatly reduced, and their retreat was not as decisive. Jiang Pengji's side chose to retreat. The enemy troops guarding Hanchang Pass were so happy that their eyes were brimming with tears. Their loud cheers boosted their morale. Jiang Pengji gritted her teeth and asked Feng Zhen as she listened to the tsunami of voices on the city walls. Is the catapult ready? Feng Zhen cupped his hands and answered, it's ready. The catapult was huge, its target was obvious, and it was difficult to move. It was rarely used except during sieges or when two armies confronted each other head-on. However, as a technological expert, how could Jiang Pengji not think of a way to solve this problem? The catapult that had first appeared in the Battle of Qingan District had been improved several times. It could basically adapt to battles on various terrains. Most importantly, the catapult could be dismantled and moved. It was not complicated to build. Even though the terrain of Hanchang Pass was narrow and precipitous, as long as it was a relatively flat area, the catapult could be built and put to use. Since they could not climb the wall and seize the pass, they might as well dismantle the pass. When Jiang Pengji sent people to attack the city, she had instructed the rear to build catapults. Now they were in position. When we get the explosives, we'll blow up wherever we hit. Whatever natural defenses, we'll raze them all to the ground. Jiang Pengji secretly gritted her teeth. If not for the chaos on the battlefield, she really wanted to take her axes and tear down the two heavy bronze gates of Hanchang Pass. Cheng Jing also noticed the situation behind him. His expression suddenly darkened. The terrain of Hanchang Pass was steep. Heavy objects like the catapult could not be transported up at all. Thinking about this, he suddenly remembered the supply wagons behind the vanguard battalion. Could it be that the things in the supply wagons were not other than the parts of the catapult? Could it be that Lu Shi had the help of an elite disciple of the school of Mo to create such a marvelous design and manufacture? Cheng Jing guessed half of it correctly. Jiang Pengji did have disciples of Moism, but Zhang Ping was more proficient in civilian equipment. Xiao Guang focused on water conservancy. Most of the time, Jiang Pengji provided the ideas for the improvement of the siege weapons. Zhang Ping led the craftsmen to try to improve them one by one. "Give me the rocket," Jiang Pengji ordered someone to bring her heavy bow. The bow was extremely heavy. From the bow to the bowstring, it was all made by the craftsmen using special materials. According to their calculations, to fully draw the bow, the person had to be at least 8 feet tall and have the strength of 4 stones. Jiang Pengji's arm length was not enough, but her height was enough. As for the strength of 4 stones needed to draw the bow, naturally, it was enough. With one foot on the ground and the other on the body of the bow, she pulled the bowstring with her right hand and lit the specially made arrow. Her whole body gathered strength. Under the guidance of the great force, the heavy bow was drawn into a full moon. Hum, a heavy buzzing sound rang out. The huge arrow suddenly left the bowstring and flew toward the city walls of Hanchang Pass. The arrowhead made of refined iron sank into the gate of the city walls. Cracks in the shape of a spider web spread in all directions. The beam of the gate was actually perturbed. Charge at that place. Smash it. Jiang Pengji's night vision was very strong. She could clearly see the situation on the city walls of Hanchang Pass, but the others could not. They could not do it, let alone the catapult gunners at the rear of the army. Qing Jing watched the whole process. His hands, which were hidden in his sleeves, were clenched tightly. His neatly trimmed, round nails left crescent marks on his palms. Jiang Pengji threw the huge bow to the orderly beside her. Her body was still surrounded by a vicious aura that had yet to dissipate. The guards on the city walls did not have time to rejoice. Huge rocks fell from the sky one after another, smashing into the city gates, the battlements, and the mountains on both sides of Hanchang Pass. The smiles on the faces of the guards at Hanchang Pass had yet to disappear. The huge rocks that fell from the sky caught them off guard. This was completely different from the script they had expected. Chapter 1046. The ferocious firepower caught the defenders of Cold Chang Pass off guard, and the advantage that they had regained with great difficulty was gone. In this era of outdated war equipment, catapults posed too much of a threat to checkpoints. Qing Jing couldn't see the situation on the city wall clearly, but judging from the sounds, the battlefield had already deviated from them. Qing Jing bowed deeply to Jiang Pengji as he recalled the earlier dispute. He thought that Jiang Pengji was being willful and rash, but looking at the current situation, it was clear that she had a card up her sleeve. Not only did he make prompt decisions and cut his losses in time, but he also made the most correct arrangements. At the same time, Qing Jing could not help but feel fear and coldness in his heart. Jiang Pengji nodded at Qing Jing, then said to the orderly, "Take my weapon, or I'll tear down Hanchang Pass today." With Hanchang Pass demolished, the Meng family of Zhangzhou would lose a natural stronghold. After crossing the treacherous river Pine, Zhangzhou would be stripped of its defenses and become a soft beauty. She could do whatever she wanted. She had killed the northern borderline, why would she be afraid of the Meng family of Zhangzhou? Back then, I said that I would cut off the head of the Meng family with my own hands. Take this Frost Chang Pass as interest. Jiang Pengji murmured. Hanchang Pass, which was originally impregnable, was now full of potholes from the stone catapults. It looked exceptionally miserable. Stop the catapults, get on the scaling ladders and siege towers. Since they couldn't climb the walls and take over the city, they would tear down the city gates and advance from both sides. With the previous experience of climbing the wall and the formation of the defenders of Cold Chang Pass being smashed by the catapults, their second attempt at climbing the wall was rather smooth. The assembled siege wood was also in place. There were 20 soldiers on each side, carrying the siege wood as they charged towards the city gate. By the time Meng Han arrived with his army, the main gate of Cold Chang Pass had already been torn down, and the two armies were engaged in a fierce battle inside the city walls. Meng Hun faintly had the urge to feel his scalp go numb. His lord was too capable. The strategists and generals under her were very pressured. Although they had yet to take down Cold Chang Pass, they had already broken through the city gates and taken over the city walls. There was almost no suspense in this battle. "Your Highness, I'm late," Jiang Pengji said. "Not late, not late. You came just in time. Lead the troops and defeat those bastards. Go back and eat your breakfast." Meng Hun, after being stunned for a while, Meng Hun answered firmly. His Highness had already given the order to take down Cold Chang Pass before dawn. "My lord, do you want?" Meng Hun looked at the two huge wolf-teeth hammers in Jiang Pengji's hands. Just looking at them was enough to make him panic. Jiang Pengji said, when the army takes over the city in trance, she really wanted to have a fight, but the two armies were locked in a fierce battle at the entrance of the city. Jiang Pengji couldn't possibly squeeze her way in, could she? When the army charged into Cold Chang Pass and the battlefield opened up, she would stretch her muscles and bones. Meng Hun heaved a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that his lord wouldn't treat him as his lord and would personally fight with his life on the line. Blades and swords had no eyes on the battlefield. If the lord dared to do this, the few masters would fight her to the death. Although Cold Chang Pass was a natural stronghold in Zhangzhou, with Meng Hun's reinforcements, the enemy gradually lost the battle line. When Jiang Pengji saw the situation, she howled and rushed into the enemy troops with two ferocious specially made wolf-teeth hammers in her hands. One hammer could kill a person, two hammers could even overturn a house. The experienced viewers in the streaming room used the bullet screen to protect themselves. The dense bullet screen covered the bloody scene. Kixingsu, the streamer is getting more and more ferocious. One hammer hit from the top of a person's head to the ground cracked. Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, you accompany the streamer in battle. You repay me with such a horrible and bloody scene? It scared me so much that the top of my skull flew off. Xiaohe Bulyaojiaojiao, I'm used to watching all kinds of horror movies and I've been through hundreds of battles. I was so scared just now that my crispy potato chips dropped. Qingbei Xiu'er, seeing this situation, I have a bold idea. If the streamer uses these two wolf-teeth hammers to pound the noodles she makes should be very chewy, right? The meat that is hammered will definitely be finer than the meat that is cut by a machine. Hao Chui Xiang Yang, to the previous poster, your answer is 100. When can I be as excellent as you? I've already washed my hands. Can I touch your trophy now? I can't. The thought of the streamer using the hammer to pound human flesh makes my stomach violently uncomfortable. The dense bullet screen couldn't stop Jiang Pengji's performance. Every life that was taken away by her with the hammer was basically indistinguishable from its original species. All that was left was a mass of blood mixed with pieces of internal organs and bone residue. Jiang Pengji personally demonstrated the beauty of violence. After killing enough, Jiang Pengji's depressed mood for the whole night was much better. Unknowingly, she had already killed her way to the residence of the general of Hanchang Pass. It was as if she had crawled out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. She was red from head to toe. According to the military order, they couldn't hurt ordinary people or the families of innocent enemy soldiers. They could only arrest them and wait for a unified punishment. Jiang Pengji entered the general's residence. The building of the residence was luxurious and there were countless servants. It was obvious that the owner was a person who enjoyed extravagant life. Not only that, but the servant girls who looked panicked and could not escape in time were mostly delicate and charming with a slim figure. Tie them up. If they do anything else that violates the military order, kill them without mercy. Jiang Pengji governed the army strictly. The soldiers didn't dare to go against the law. However, besides her soldiers, there were also Huang Songs. It was inevitable that they would do something outrageous. Her worry was not without reason. When Jiang Pengji barged into the inner courtyard, she saw a few soldiers forcing two servant girls with hideous smiles. This kind of situation was very common. Huang Song had always forbidden it, but it couldn't stop the chaos of war. There would always be villains who took advantage of the chaos to commit crimes. Even if they were discovered, the low-quality soldiers would drag their companions into the mire and shield each other. However, Jiang Pengji was someone who couldn't bear to have sand in her eyes. She didn't even blink. With a few hammers, she took them away. Qing Jing and Feng Zhen followed her. There were also a few personal guards surrounding her to prevent Jiang Pengji from being hurt by the chaotic troops. It turned out that Jiang Pengji was lucky enough not to hurt anyone. Looking at the corpses that had been smashed into minced meat, Qing Jing's eyelids twitched. Jiang Pengji rested the handle of the Wolf Fang hammer on her shoulder with one hand and said to Qing Jing with a smile, "They're just a few scum who violated military discipline. Bogeo won't hold it against me. If he sees the behavior of these scum, he'll most likely have them punished according to military law." Qing Jing looked expressionless, but in fact, his heart was in turmoil. Jiang Pengji tilted her head and glanced at the tightly shut door of the inner courtyard. Behind the door came the sound of women sobbing. There was more than one person. She lifted her foot and kicked the door open. Indeed, there were more than 10 women and young children hiding in the courtyard. "Take them away," the soldiers went forward and grabbed the women. They were crying non-stop, as if they were mourning for their future. Only one person was an exception. Wait, a woman dressed in plain clothes with her hair tied up in a woman's bun walked through the crowd. She walked forward with her head held high and chest puffed out. "You are?" Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes. The woman's face was somewhat familiar. Chapter 1047. Jiang Pengji looked at the woman calmly without a word, as if she was thinking about something. When Feng Zhen, who was standing to the side, saw the woman's appearance, his originally dull eyes brightened in an instant. Admiration flashed in his eyes. Don't be fooled by Feng Zhen's wanton love of freedom. In some ways, this prodigal Feng was a devoted person. How many beauties were there in the world? Those who outshone the moon and put flowers to shame, and those who were thin and fat were too numerous to count. Among the 3,000 beauties, Feng Zhen only loved the older sister. If she wasn't a mature older sister, no matter how beautiful she was, she would be bland and uninteresting in his eyes. The plain-clothed woman in front of him happened to be Feng Zhen's favorite type. Her face was like a goose egg and her skin was creamy. She had a pair of phoenix eyes, long and narrow, curved inward and outward. Her black eyebrows were like willow leaves in February. She had bright eyes and a slender figure. Her waist was like a willow. Even though she wore plain-colored clothes, it couldn't hide her maturity. According to Feng Zhen's standards, he would give this woman a high score of over 90. Although beauty was good, one didn't have to take it for oneself. Feng Zhen's attitude was still one of appreciation. Seeing that his lord didn't speak, Feng Zhen smiled and said, "Is what you said true?" The woman secretly clenched her fists in her sleeves, but her face was calm as she answered. "Everything I said is true. How would I dare to gamble with my own life?" The woman smiled faintly, as if her previous anxiety and worry were just an illusion. Hanchang Pass had been breached by the enemy. Cries of killing could be heard everywhere. The servants and maids were all busy escaping. How could they care about this family? The woman was born in Hejian County and married to Cangzhou at the age of 20. Although she was a woman from an aristocratic family, she knew what would happen to the family of the enemy after the city was breached. Before Jiang Pengji arrived, the soldiers robbed and killed the servants who fled. They even had evil thoughts about the maids in the manor. When the other concubines were at a loss, the woman decisively gathered the women and children to hide in the inner courtyard. They used the walls to resist for a while. While hiding in the inner courtyard, she heard the sound of several maids being captured by the enemy. Their pitiful cries even drowned out the cries of killing outside. Therefore, when the door of the inner court was kicked open, the woman mistakenly thought that Jiang Pengji and the others had ill intentions. If he didn't do anything, the fate of all the women in the courtyard would be worrying, and even the children would find it hard to keep their lives. In desperation, the woman simply mentioned Jiang Pengji, hoping that there would be a chance of survival. She really knew Jiang Pengji. They had some contact when they were young. It was not a lie to say that she was an old friend. Fengzhen glanced at the woman, then turned to look at his lord. She was staring at him with her black and white eyes. This is interesting. My master is right in front of you. If you really are an old friend of my master, why didn't you recognize him? He looked at the woman with a faint smile. She quickly understood Fengzhen's meaning, and her already pale face instantly lost all color. Lushi? The woman turned her gaze and looked at Jiang Pengji, who was in the middle. Her words were filled with disbelief. She really didn't expect Jiang Pengji to be in front of her. Fengzhen was just about to smile when his lord nodded at the woman. Yeah, long time no see. Fengzhen, no, the woman in front of him was really an old friend of his lord? Fengzhen was dumbfounded. The audience was also dumbfounded. They didn't have Jiang Pengji's abnormal memory. After the commotion, the ancient big boss who had been lurking for a long time jumped out. Tudu Feiqiu, this lady looks a little familiar. I remember she was one of the noble ladies who appeared when the host first started streaming. She was Shang Guanwan's best friend. He had been frantically searching through the streaming notes and finally found her, Wanxiu, Gui Kai Guofengxiu, damn, big boss, you're still alive. Qilin, I worship you, big boss. Shou Shirtu, I worship you, big boss. 20 Sui Jiu Yu, go, pokeball. Capture a big boss alive. Those who were familiar with the streaming knew that the first viewer in the streaming room was Tudu Feiqiu. The first recorded video was also from him. It was said that he was also the founder of the Empress's streaming forum and the editor of a related magazine. It was rumored that a tycoon had spent millions just to buy his ancient ID. Unfortunately, he refused to sell it. The woman was Wanxiu. She had met Jiang Pengji several times in the past. She heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Jiang Pengji's response. She didn't know which mountain of corpses and sea of blood Jiang Pengji had crawled out from. She was covered in blood and it was a frightening sight. How could she recognize such a horrifying appearance? The last time they met was 8 years ago. Jiang Pengji was taller than ordinary women. Many men had to look up to her. She wore armor and a helmet. She held a pair of hammers in her hands. She stood there simply. She was a young general full of heroic spirit. Who would associate her with a maid? Your husband's family? Jiang Pengji looked at her attire and frowned. If Wanxiu's husband was an enemy general at Hanchang Pass, his corpse would have been cold by now. Although Jiang Pengji would not show mercy, it was somewhat embarrassing to kill an old friend's husband and make her a widow. Wanxiu sighed softly and looked calm. My husband's family is the general guarding Hanchang Pass. I guess he has already reported to the King of Hell. The calmer the other party was, the more embarrassed Jiang Pengji was. Wanxiu's reaction to the death of her husband was calm, but her husband's concubines and children were crying loudly. They didn't even care about their image. Hearing the commotion, Wanxiu looked down indifferently and sneered. Jiang Pengji was also thick-skinned. She did not hold back her embarrassment for long. She said calmly, considering our friendship, I will return your husband's body to you after the war ends. At least he can be buried in peace and his corpse won't be exposed in the wilderness. Wan Xiao said, I am your prisoner. If my deceased husband's body can be left intact, it will be considered a good ending. Her reaction angered the crying concubines, who scolded her one by one. You old shrew who can't lay eggs. The master has always been good to you. Now that he's gone, you're not even willing to shed a tear. Could it be that you're cursing the master to die early so that you can climb to a higher branch? What a vicious heart you have. Evil woman, you will get your retribution sooner or later. A few beautiful concubines were weeping and sobbing, and a few young children were sobbing in their arms. Wan Xiao didn't even bother to raise her eyebrows. Seeing the situation, Jiang Pengji ordered people to take the noisy women and children away. Her action was not rough, but it was not gentle either. Look at you, you haven't been very comfortable all these years. Wan Xiao tucked her scattered hair behind her ears and looked calm. Chapter 1048. Jiang Pengji looked at her, the memories in her mind becoming clearer and clearer. In her memory, Wan Xiao was gentle and intelligent. She was the standard aristocratic daughter of Hejian's aristocratic family, charming and gentle. Now that they met again, she seemed to have changed into a different person. Her eyes seemed to have seen through the world. Her husband had died, but she reacted as if a familiar stranger had died. She was frighteningly calm. Although she was a prisoner, because she was Jiang Pengji's old friend, Wan Xiao did not suffer. Thank you. Wan Xiao bowed and followed the soldiers of the female battalion to the camp where the female prisoners were kept. Why are you stretching your neck? Jiang Pengji glanced at Fengzhen impatiently. The other party's weakness was caught, but he said calmly, everyone loves beauty. My lord, please let me look at such a beauty that suits your taste. Seeing too many broken walls, mountains of corpses, and seas of blood will inevitably affect your mood. Do you think this makes sense, my lord? Nonsense. Jiang Pengji snorted and sent people to clean up the battlefield. Fengzhen hurriedly followed. Qingjing, who was watching from the side, sighed and followed closely. They had won the battle. The whole army was beaming with joy and their morale was high. The generals wanted to take advantage of this momentum and cross the Song River in one go. If they delayed for a while, when the enemy's reinforcements arrived, the two armies would have to face each other across the Song River. It would be a waste of time and energy. However, the strategists had the opposite opinion. The Song River was vast, rapid, and precipitous. It was still winter, so there was no ice on the surface. If they were not familiar with the water, wouldn't they give the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of them? Moreover, the two armies had just gone through a big battle. They needed time to adjust their condition. If they ignored everything and forced their way across the Song River, even if they reached the other side, they would be exhausted and powerless. What was the difference between encountering the enemy and courting death? Marching on water was different from marching on the road. Those who were not good at swimming would get seasick and their condition would deteriorate. They might even fall sick because they were not acclimatized. The Song River was not the Yi River. It was turbulent and not as smooth as the Yi River. If they were not good at swimming, wouldn't they die? In addition, the strategists had their own considerations. There is a saying in the art of war, when a guest arrives at the end of the river, do not welcome him in the water. This was the so-called attacking halfway through, a very useful tactic. Generally speaking, when two armies face each other across the river, when the enemy is halfway across the river, part of the enemy has already reached the shore, while the other part is still crossing the river. At this time, the front and the tail are not connected, and the formation is in chaos. If we go and annihilate the enemy, it will be advantageous to our side. If Jiang Pengji and the rest crossed the river without any preparation, the enemy would easily seize the opportunity. At that time, he would not be able to take care of both the front and the back, and he would not be familiar with water battles. He would definitely die. For example, in the previous battle against the northern borderline, if the northern borderline did not panic first and instead took the opportunity to launch an attack while Jiang Pengji was halfway through, the outcome of the battle would have been completely different. Unfortunately, the northern borderline was one step behind. They revealed a flaw first and were defeated by Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji and Huang Song considered the opinions of the strategists. They simply set up camp near the Song River. The army rested for a few days before making any further plans. In this great victory, Huang Song rejected the suggestion of splitting the loot 50-50. He took the initiative to take 40% of the spoils of war, while Jiang Pengji took 60%. The generals under Huang Song's command were very unhappy with this decision, but they had to admit that Jiang Pengji's side had contributed the most in this breakthrough. She had contributed the most, so naturally she had the right to take the biggest share. Jiang Pengji let Wei Xi and Feng Jin deal with the captives, the military supplies, and the distribution of the remaining assets. Wei Xi and Feng Jin had just left when Feng Zhen called out to them from behind. He stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Feng Zhen, inquiring with his eyes. They were busy now, so they did not have time to play with Feng Zhen. I heard that the Lord entrusted the two of you with an important task. Zhen, I have a presumptuous request. It was rare for Feng Zhen to be so serious. He spoke in a genteel manner, even using the term Zhen. What is it? Feng Jin asked aloud. Because of his personality, Feng Jin did not like Feng Zhen very much. Unfortunately, his lord was also an unrestrained and wonderful person, so Feng Jin could only try to get along with people like Feng Zhen. After working together for a long time, he slowly felt that Feng Zhen's bad habits were not unbearable. Feng Zhen looked at Feng Jin, then at Wei Xi, his expression hesitant. He wanted to pull one of them over to have a private conversation, but doing so would definitely offend the other person. In that case, he might as well go all out. In this battle, there was someone among the female captives. You know. Feng Zhen smiled and raised his eyebrows. The expressions of the two people in front of him darkened. They didn't know. Seeing this, Feng Zhen hurriedly used Jiang Pengji as a shield and said righteously, "Don't misunderstand. That woman is an old friend of the Lord." But the Lord was too busy and seemed to have forgotten about this. She was really worried that the female captives would be taken away by Huang Song and his group. Feng Jin and Wei Xi were speechless. As if they would believe you. In the end, it was Wei Xi who gave them face. Who is that woman? No matter how frivolous Feng Zhen was, he was still a good friend. She and the Lord are both from Hejian County. She seems to be the widow of the defending general of Hanchang Pass. After asking around, her name is Wan Xiu. Wan Xiu. Wei Xi's eyes widened slightly and he stared at Feng Zhen for a long time. Wei Xi was no stranger to the name Wan Xiu. The Jiang dynasty was open-minded. After a woman married, she would continue to use her maiden name instead of the simple Wanshi of Feng. Wei Xi could remember the name Wan Xiu for two reasons. First, this person made Feng Zhen change his mind. Second, she was Changsheng's confidant, Feng Yu's birth mother. If he remembered correctly, before Wan Xiu remarried to Feng Zhen, she was indeed the wife of a general under the Mengs. However, the situation in his past life and this life were different. In his past life, the Mengs were annexed by Huang Song. Wan Xiu's husband took advantage of the situation and defected to Huang Song. At that time, Feng Zhen was also working under Huang Song. After Huang Song was hounded to death by the Lord, Feng Zhen became loyal and even asked the Lord for the widowed Wan Xiu. Now, fate was too wonderful for words. Wei Xi said, "Okay, I'll remember this." In fact, there was no need for Feng Zhen to come over to remind her. Jiang Pengji had not forgotten about this. After she finished her business, she got up and went to the women's camp to see Wan Xiao. In any case, she was an old friend. She even killed her husband. It was only right to give her some preferential treatment. Do you want to keep your husband's family? Jiang Pengji asked her. If they are, it's not a problem to give them some food to eat. 3 concubines, 6 concubines, 4 maids who had slept with him, and 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. With such a large lineup, one could imagine the days Wan Xiao had spent in their backyard. Wan Xiao said, everyone has their own fate. Let's leave it to fate. Leave it to fate? Did that mean she didn't care? Jiang Pengji was surprised. Don't you want to leave a bloodline for your short-lived husband? A hint of coldness flashed in Wan Xiao's eyes. The nails on her right hand almost dug into the flesh of her palm. Chapter 1049. Previously, a concubine insulted Wan Xiao as an old shrew who couldn't lay eggs. Was that true? No. Wan Xiao's physique was slightly cold, so her chances of conceiving were lower than that of an ordinary woman. However, after taking good care of herself, she was no different from an ordinary woman. After 2 years of marriage, the child she longed for arrived. However, there was a serious internal strife in the backyard, and her husband was even more unscrupulous. He would bring all sorts of fragrant and smelly things into their backyard. Did he really think that their backyard was a garbage dump? For the sake of their children, Wan Xiao tolerated them for a while, but those women kept their eyes on her position as the legal wife and repeatedly attacked her. Guard day and night. It is difficult to guard against a thief in one's own house. She could fend off other women's plots, but she never thought that she would fall into the hands of the person who slept next to her. It was rare for her husband to show such tenderness, but the food he gave her had been added with something poisonous that could cause a woman to have an abortion. She had been in pain for a day and a night. Her 2-month-old child flowed out of her body like water. Wan Xiao investigated and found out that her stupid husband actually listened to the concubine's words. He believed that the concubine really wanted to bury the hatchet with her. Not only that, her husband even made the food that the noble concubine had personally made into something that he had specially made for her and tricked her into eating it. After Wan Xiao was able to get out of bed, she led her men and rushed to the concubine's courtyard, intending to kill her and throw her out of the inner courtyard. Why was it that she had lost her child, but the other party wasn't hurt at all? Unfortunately, she had someone to rely on. The other party said arrogantly, if you didn't block the way, the one who married cousin would be me. What right do you have to act like the legal wife in front of me? Yes. I did trick my cousin into feeding you the medicine, but so what? Your cousin and mother-in-law won't acknowledge the child in your womb. Wan Xiao was once trapped in a bandit's stronghold. Even though Jiang Pengji testified for the noble ladies, the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women became popular in Hejin County and Sangzhou. That stain was brought up as a topic of discussion and even a reason to attack her. That was the main reason why Wan Xiao was struggling. Apart from that, the husband and mother-in-law also believed in what their ancestral home said. The firstborn child of a woman is of the firstborn male blood. If she wanted to give birth to her husband's child, the first child must be aborted and washed clean. Because of this absurd reason, Wan Xiao's child was gone. Her husband even said something to her shamelessly. Since you can give birth, we will have a legitimate son. I don't even despise you for being unclean. Why are you being so sentimental? Every time Wan Xiao thought of his face and his words, she felt so disgusted that her stomach churned. She wished she could poke him into a sieve. Son of the first wife. Since then, Wan Xiao didn't even bother to let her husband stay the night on the 1st and 15th of every month. If he insisted on staying, she would push away the maids who wanted to stand up for him. No matter what, she was disgusted by this man. She wanted to vomit just by looking at him, let alone sharing the same bed. Those women and children? Jiang Pengji saw Wan Xiao's gloomy face. Wan Xiao must have recalled some terrible memories. Wan Xiao was in a good mood. Let's leave it to fate. Lanting has the final say. But if Jiang Pengji remembered correctly, when she first met Wan Xiao, she was still protecting the women and children in the courtyard. Wan Xiao snorted softly and said flatly, "If the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. If they were to suffer, a weak woman like me wouldn't be safe either. The situation is different now. Because of our past friendship, you won't humiliate me. But you don't have any friendship with them, and I want my reputation too. Why would I embarrass myself in front of you for a few people I hate so much?" Wan Xiao and Jiang Pengji's friendship could at most protect her. At least she would have a place to stay in the future. She had nothing to do with those concubines, maids who accompanied her to bed, and sons and daughters of concubines. Why should she keep a string of burdens? Jiang Pengji was speechless. Wan Xiao saw it all too clearly. Life in the past wasn't going your way, but it will always be good in the future. Growth was accompanied by pain. The more painful it was, the faster one would grow. If her life was a little better, she could more or less keep the romance of her youth, but now she seemed to have accepted everything. Wan Xiao smiled faintly, and her tone was a little light. "It's good that we can survive in this chaotic world. I only ask that you bestow me with some kindness and shelter me." Jiang Pengji hadn't seen her old friend for a long time. Wan Xiao's temperament was to her liking, so they started chatting. The topic still revolved around the past and old friends. Wan Xiao said, "Except for you and Jing Xian, almost none of the people who fell into the bandits' village had a good ending. The former was a lord who dominated a region and killed Wan Xiao's husband. He could be considered half a benefactor. The latter married into the Feng family of Shanyang. Although she wasn't a member of the royal family, it was said that Feng Jin hadn't taken a concubine for many years after his marriage. He loved his wife and was clean. For women, marrying someone was like marrying Feng Huayu." Jiang Pengji said, "I don't know about others, but Wan is okay." Wan Wan Xiao murmured, and Sheng Wan's face appeared in her mind. "I married early, and I vaguely heard that Wan married a short-lived ghost who died early and became a widow. Later, she was stolen away. Is this kind of ending considered good? So that's how they explain Wan's disappearance." Jiang Pengji was surprised. She smiled and explained, "Wan wasn't stolen. She followed my subordinate and traveled thousands of miles to Xiangyang district to find me. Now she's married to Han Mei and has a daughter." "Han Mei? My vanguard captain. His surname is Li and his given name is Yun. His courtesy name is Han Mei." After listening, Wan Xiao let out a long sigh. There was a hint of envy in her voice. She has good luck. Speaking of envy, it was the person in front of her that made her the most envious. He was a lord who dominated a region. If Jiang Pengji hadn't set a precedent, Wan Xiao wouldn't have thought that a woman could do this. Not long after, Jiang Pengji found out about Feng Zhen's favoritism from Wei Ci. "Tsk, beauty is above his head." Wei Ci laughed. "If this beauty can make Zisher change his mind, it's not a bad thing." "Change his mind? Him?" Jiang Pengji looked disgusted. "He'd better not harm others. Make Langzi change his mind?" The difficulty was comparable to the foolish old man moving a mountain. Wei Ci laughed. If he didn't have the memory of his past life, he would also despise Feng Zhen. Right, has the matter of the captives been resolved? Wei Ci said, we're discussing it. Although it was 60%, quantity didn't mean quality. They had to discuss it slowly. If they got a bunch of old, weak, sick, and disabled people, they might as well not have anything. Jiang Pengji said, Wan Xiu's deceased husband's wives, concubines, sons, and daughters can all be pushed to Bogeo. Wei Ci frowned. If we do that, Jiang Pengji didn't have a brothel here. She wouldn't allow such a thing to happen, but it was different on Huang Song's side. If the concubines were assigned there, the lucky ones would be taken in as concubines by some low-ranking general. The unlucky ones might become camp prostitutes. Chapter 1050. Wei Ci laughed. Although she was kind, she wasn't a good person. Only his lord could say such honest words. How does my lord plan to settle the captives? Although the captives hadn't been distributed yet, they had to plan ahead. If it was an ordinary army, the soldiers captured in the middle of a battle would be thrown to the front as cannon fodder. This seemed cruel, but it had its benefits. Firstly, it could increase the number of soldiers and intimidate the enemy. Secondly, it could use proper methods to get rid of the weeds. Thirdly, it could reduce the number of people to feed the army and save on food expenses. Finally, it could use them as a shield. It was really making the best use of everything. Captives were different from the army. They had different qualities. If they were left untreated, they would become a burden to the army. Those captives had eaten rice for more than 10 years to grow to their current size. If they didn't contribute to society and died, it would be a waste of resources. Move them in batches. There's still a lot of uncultivated land in the rear. Wei Ci grunted in acknowledgement. He was about to pass on Jiang Pengji's order when he saw Feng Zhen's figure disappear from the tent. What did military advisor Feng come here for? The soldier said, military advisor Feng came and ordered us to take inventory. Wei Ci was even more curious. Feng Zhen was lazy. Why would he take on tasks outside of his responsibility? Inventory what? The soldier answered, inventory the items of the widow of the garrison general of Hanchang Pass. Military advisor Feng said he wanted to return them to their owners. The corner of Wei Ci's mouth twitched. He knew Feng Zhen wasn't that diligent. Is there a list? Let me see. Wei Ci stretched out his hand. The soldier hurriedly passed the list to him. The items on the bamboo slips were all things that Feng Zhen wanted. There weren't many items. Other than clothes, jewelry, silks, and playthings, there were also a few deeds to land in the Zhangzhou region. There was almost no money. Overall, this list wasn't worth much. With Feng Zhen's current status, no one would say anything if he secretly kept these items. However, this kind of behavior was not a big deal, but it was also a stain on his reputation. Wei Ci frowned. He opened the bamboo scroll and a piece of paper fell out. What's this? The soldier said, it's a note from Counselor Feng. He said that if the items on the list are exchanged for money, he will fill in the gaps. The corners of Wei Ci's mouth twitched. He had wronged the prodigal son. Although the prodigal son was frivolous, he was also cautious and careful. How could he easily give others a handle on him? What time is it now? Why don't you look at the occasion when you're chasing after a beauty? After 2 or 3 years in the army, a Cao could compete with a Diaochan. From the start of the northern borderline's preparations for war until now, Feng Zhen had indeed been single for a long time, but this wasn't a reason for him to be moved by the sight of a beautiful and widowed royal sister, right? What do you mean by returning the item to its rightful owner? Wasn't he just taking the opportunity to make a good impression and see if there was a chance for him to take advantage of the situation? These words were a misunderstanding of Fengzhen. In his opinion, admiring a beautiful woman was a form of enjoyment. Admiring her was one thing, but it did not mean that he wanted her for himself. To be honest, he quite admired his lord, but even if he was given 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to think about her. After fighting for so many years, it was rare for him to see a woman that suited his taste. Was he not allowed to take a few more glances? Lady Wan, take a look. Are there any that you missed out? Wan Xiao was flattered. No matter how ignorant she was, she knew that Fengzhen was Jiang Pengji's strategist. How could she not be scared when he came in person? Fengzhen's ability to handle matters was inversely proportional to his moral integrity. Wan Xiao took a quick look, and it seemed as if he was missing nothing. Governor Liu, thank you for your kind intentions. I'll have to trouble Mr. Feng to make another trip. Wan Xiao could not figure out whether Fengzhen's actions were Jiang Pengji's instructions or something else, but seeing that he looked genial and not impatient, she thought that he should be easy to talk to. Wan Xiao deliberated and said, "There is one thing that I would like to trouble Mr. Feng with." Fengzhen dressed up carefully and restrained his unruly expression. He was still a man of good looks and appearance. Lady Wan, please speak. Wan Xiao thought for a while and said hesitantly, "It's like this, I have 2 panzihua plants in my yard. My deceased mother planted a yard when she was alive. When I got married, my deceased mother gave me a seedling of the panzihua. I've raised them for many years, so I have some feelings for them." Panzihua? Fengzhen was very knowledgeable. Naturally, he had heard of this ornamental plant. It was rumored that in some borderlands, the panzihua was used as a token of love between men and women. When a mother gave her daughter a panzihua on her wedding day, it was also a blessing. It was no wonder that Wan Xiao was reluctant. Lady Wan, you want to move the panzihua in your yard? If it was moved, it would be difficult for the plant to survive. Wan Xiao laughed. She seemed to be amused by Fengzhen's imagination. She explained, "The army is still at war. How can I let Mr. Feng allocate troops to dig panzihua for me? I just want to move a seedling from the main pole and keep it by my side as a comfort." Fengzhen's brows relaxed. If it was just to take a seedling, it would not be difficult. Coincidentally, they were still resting and Fengzhen was an idler. He volunteered to accompany Wan Xiao. Fengzhen was not invisible. The news of him accompanying a beautiful woman out of the army camp quickly reached Jiang Pengji's ears. "Damn! Can't you look at the timing when you're hitting on a girl?" Jiang Pengji's expression was twisted. She broke the brush in her right hand. She was busy, but Fengzhen only cared about hitting on a girl. What did humans do? Fengzhen could not feel Jiang Pengji's resentment. He accompanied Wan Xiao to her original residence and went all the way to the inner yard. Indeed, there were several panzihua plants in the inner yard. Panzihua was not a flower. To be precise, it was a tree. According to historical records, the panzihua was 12 feet tall. It had 3 branches and looked like it would burn at night. Apart from that, there was also a record of cut paulownia wood. The flowers wither in February or March. Fengzhen had heard of the panzihua, but it was his first time seeing it. Only a small number of influential people could keep it in their homes as ornamental plants. If Wan Xiao's deceased mother had not been born into a high status, she would not have been able to keep it in her backyard. Fengzhen sat on the ground and craned his neck to look at Wan Xiao. After looking for a while, his neck was sore. He had not slept well for the past 2 days because of the war. Leaning against the tree trunk, he felt sleepy. Wan Xiao saw his movements and remembered that Fengzhen had come all the way here with her. She felt grateful. She did not have anything valuable on her, and he did not care for it. Instead of giving him something valuable that would only make him a laughing stock, it was better to give him something practical. However, she was now a widowed woman. It was not appropriate for her to give Fengzhen anything alone. She might as well give Jiang Pengji and the others their share. After processing the panzihua, you can use it to fill pillows. Then, you can stuff some dried flowers to help you sleep. It will be more comfortable than a wooden pillow. Oh. Fengzhen came to his senses and replied, "It has such an effect?" Chapter 1051. The two of them chatted on and off. Wan Xiao was a meticulous person. She quickly learned about Fengzhen's basic situation from their conversation. He was a widower with a son. His eyes lit up when he talked about his son. He said he didn't like him, but he couldn't hide his pride. Wan Xiao looked calm on the surface, but she found it funny. She thought that someone who could work for the female lord must be cunning and cunning. She didn't expect Fengzhen to be so innocent. Well, he was much cuter than those hypocritical and pretentious men. To prevent all the seedlings from dying, Wan Xiao moved 2 more seedlings and took good care of them. They should survive. Seeing that she was done, Fengzhen got up and sent her back to the temporary tent of the women's camp. Wan Xiao lit an oil lamp and found the dried panzihua flowers she had dried last year. She made a few pillows overnight and stuffed the dried flowers into them. Thin, narrow, and tall wooden pillows were popular. The higher one's status, the better the wooden pillow. Wooden pillows were too tall, which caused many people to suffer from stiff pillows. Wan Xiao's mother was the same. Her mother dried the fallen panzihua flowers, picked the softest and thinnest ones, and stuffed them into the pillows as fillers. Wan Xiao didn't like wooden pillows. Her husband hadn't slept in her room for years, so she changed her pillow. As long as she was comfortable. Wan Xiao asked the female soldier to send a few pillows out that night, so as not to attract gossip. Jiang Pengji benefited from this. She hugged the soft pillow and sniffed it. It had a slight fragrance. "What's in it?" "It smells good." Jiang Pengji was having her meal when she received it. Fengzhen had been forced to work overtime. She watched him work to see if he had the time to flirt with girls. Fengzhen saw the things in Jiang Pengji's arms and remembered what Wan Xiao had said yesterday. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. If nothing went wrong, he would see the same gift when he returned to the tent after finishing his task. Thinking about this, he felt that it was a pity. Alas, the one and only gift was shared and enjoyed by others. It was others who benefited from him, but it seemed like he benefited from the Lord. In the name of thanking Jiang Pengji, Wan Xiao gave Jiang Pengji and the strategists and generals whom Jiang Pengji valued highly. "It should be panzihua," Fengzhen replied. "Panzihua? Using dried flowers as the pillow core, she's really thoughtful." Jiang Pengji didn't know what it was, but she thought the name sounded nice. Pinching the soft pillow, Jiang Pengji planned to try it at night. "Xiao is really clever. This pillow can be changed." Jiang Pengji noticed that there was a rope on one side of the pillow. She pulled it open and realized that the 2 sides were not sewn together with a needle and thread. Instead, they were tied tightly with a long rope, but there were no gaps. Jiang Pengji untied the rope and took out the thing inside. She lowered her head and did not notice the huge change in the bullet screen in the live streaming room. "Zuiwanyan, you scared me to death. When I first heard of panzihua, I thought a city was stuffed into my pillow. I am Susu, how embarrassing. I misunderstood too. Junpo, Xiaodo Sak, I remember panzihua is another name for the ancient kapok tree, right? Kapok tree." Most of the audience was still confused, wondering what kind of flower panzihua was, but some of them had already figured it out. "This thing is a kapok tree. I don't like to eat apple, I've seen it before." I remember that kapok was an ornamental plant in ancient times. It was only later processed and used. Glutinous rice ball soldier, wow, does this mean that the streamer can grow cotton now? The productivity of ancient society was low, and the people had to worry about food, clothing, housing, and transportation for their entire lives. In terms of food, Jiang Pengji had already started researching sweet potatoes and sweet potatoes. These two things had a large yield and could feed many people. If she used high-yield cotton to solve the problem of clothing, when Jiang Pengji conquered the whole world, the prosperous dynasty would be just around the corner. The audience was excited, but there were also some top students who poured cold water on them. Lo Siji Lianmeng, cotton is the seed fiber of cotton plants in the mallow family. The cotton we often talk about should be fine wool cotton. It has high yield and good fiber quality. The kapok tree belongs to the kapok family. Its stamens can be used as raw material for fabrics. The kapok tree itself can also be used to make paper. Although the cotton wool of kapok can also be made into cotton-padded clothes, in terms of garment making and production, it is definitely not as good as the cotton we are familiar with. The flowers of the kapok tree are not equivalent to cotton. With the old driver's explanation, the enthusiasm of the audience was greatly dampened. However, when Jiang Pengji took out the stuffing inside, their enthusiasm soared again. There was kapok cotton wool in it, but there was also white cotton. Jiang Pengji picked up a ball and squeezed it. It felt good. In her era, real pure cotton clothes could only be worn by the rich. However, pure cotton clothes had all kinds of problems. As a soldier, Jiang Pengji could only wear it once or twice when she was on vacation. Normally, she wore the special military uniform. The military uniform was made from a certain extremely tough plant fiber in the galaxy. It was more comfortable to the touch than cotton, but it was difficult for a normal knife to cut it. Therefore, she did not know what cotton was called in ancient times, but she knew what this ball of stuff was used for. In her excitement, Jiang Pengji smashed the table in front of her. The sudden loud noise scared Fengzhen so much that he could not even hold the brush steadily. He actually drew a long line of ink on the rice paper. What was she doing? Fengzhen raised his head to look at his lord. Selfishly, he thought that the utensils his lord used should be made of copper or iron. Otherwise, changing them every few days was too wasteful. My lord? Fengzhen asked weakly. Jiang Pengji suddenly stood up and said, You continue, I'll leave first. She patted her butt and left without a word. Fengzhen, now that his lord was not around, could he sneak around and do something? Wan Xiao was sorting out the things that Fengzhen had sent. She definitely could not go with the army. The biggest possibility was that Jiang Pengji would send her to her territory. With this thought in mind, Wan Xiao began to pack her luggage so that she would not be flustered when the time came. Hearing movement outside, Wan Xiao stretched her neck in surprise. Seeing that it was Jiang Pengji, she stood up and bowed. No need to be so polite. Jiang Pengji released her palm and asked directly, Where did you get this thing? Wan Xiao was shocked. She thought that there was something wrong with the ball of cotton wool. Her originally pale face became even paler. Could it be that someone had done something to the cotton wool? Someone had used her to frame Lu Shi? For a moment, all kinds of conspiracy theories and shady plots flashed through her mind. After a while, she said hesitantly, This is the tree that I planted in the courtyard. Is there anything wrong with it? Could it be that something had really happened? Jiang Pengji excitedly grabbed Wan Xiao's delicate hand. She asked excitedly, How many more? Where are the trees? Wan Xiao was confused, but she breathed a sigh of relief. Judging from Jiang Pengji's expression, it shouldn't be anything bad. She could rest assured. There are 3 of these trees in the courtyard. There are also 7 normal Pengji flowers. Wan Xiao did not know the name of the tree that grew the cotton wool, but it was mixed with the pangji flowers as part of the dowry. It should also be a type of pangji flower. At most, it looked a little strange. Chapter 1052. Take me to have a look. Jiang Pengji's eyes shone as she requested. Although it was a request, Wan Xiao had no room to refuse. Wan Xiao said, "The mansion is some distance away from the camp. Don't you want to send someone to prepare a carriage and guards first? You're the lord of a region. If you're alone, there might be an accident. They're still planted in the inner courtyard of the previous mansion. They can't run away." Jiang Pengji did not listen to these words. She pulled Wan Xiao out of the military tent and said to the orderly who was waiting outside, "Prepare the horse." She was a swift and decisive person. The cotton was an important matter related to the people's livelihood. She did not want to wait for a moment. She was too rough during the war. She did not know if she disturbed the few cotton plants. The orderly pulled White over. Jiang Pengji leaped onto the horse's back and extended her hand to Wan Xiao. Wan Xiao subconsciously extended her hand. She only felt Jiang Pengji lift her up the horse with force. Surprise! Before Wan Xiao could react, Jiang Pengji had already galloped out of the camp. A few orderly behind her mounted the horse and followed her. However, their lord's mount was too powerful. White had not unleashed its full power for a long time. It could not stop once it started galloping. When the few orderly and guards arrived at the destination, trembling with fear, Jiang Pengji had been looking at the few cotton plants for a long time. Wan Xiao was still in a state of shock. Her clothes were disheveled. Her hair was scattered on her shoulders. The pearls and jades that were used to hold her in place were gone. Looking at her, they thought that their lord had pinned them to the ground. "Why are you so late?" The panting soldier was dumbfounded and subconsciously asked for forgiveness. Jiang Pengji said, "Forget it. Go get a shovel and dig up all these trees. Remember not to damage the roots." Oh! Oh! Everyone was stunned for a moment before they reacted. They all went to find shovels. "Be careful. When you dig them out, the roots must be wrapped in soil," Jiang Pengji commanded the whole time. The soldiers were trembling with fear as if they were walking on thin ice. It was not that they were timid. Anyone who had seen Jiang Pengji kill enemies on the battlefield would be afraid of her. They were busy until sunset. The few trees were carefully moved out. To make it easier to move, they even found an extra-large pottery tank. Jiang Pengji drilled a few holes at the bottom of a few ceramic jars for easy watering in the future. The cotton was not tall. The 3 stalks were only 4 to 5 feet tall. The panzihua was slightly taller, but it was only a little more than 10 feet. Jiang Pengji heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that they had been moved out safely. Wan Xiao's curiosity was piqued. She knew that Jiang Pengji was a person who would do great things. If the thing was useless, Jiang Pengji would not be so nervous. Is there anything unusual about this object? Wan Xiao had been planting them for a few years. Apart from the unique pattern, the dried flowers could be used to fill pillows and mattresses, but there seemed to be no other use for them. Because of the cotton and the kapok tree, Jiang Pengji's impression of Wan Xiao went up another level. She said bluntly, "Of course there is. It can protect all the people in the world from the cold." Wan Xiao blinked her eyes. Of course, she would not doubt Jiang Pengji's words, but, these ornamental plants, were they really that powerful? So that the people of the world would not suffer from the cold? Even the reincarnation of a saint would not be able to do this, right? You've done a great service. Jiang Pengji pressed her hands on both sides of her shoulders. I can't thank you enough. If you have any needs, I will definitely satisfy them. Although they were separated by thick clothes and a mink fur cloak, she could still feel Jiang Pengji's slender hands. They were very strong and inexplicably gave her a sense of security that she had never felt before. Wan Xiu would not have believed such an ordinary promise in the past, but the person who said it was Jiang Pengji, so she believed it. I can't accept such a promise. A gentleman's promise is worth the 5 mountains. Jiang Pengji emphasized. She did not say it casually. Wan Xiu's face suddenly turned red. She rolled her eyes at Jiang Pengji and said in an annoyed tone, "You. So many years have passed, but your glib tongue has not deteriorated. You said that to Jingxian back then, and now it's me. Who else do you want to say that to in the future?" She remembered clearly that when Jiang Pengji's gender was exposed, many noble ladies ridiculed her, and Wan Xiu was also jealous. She never thought that Jiang Pengji would use the same words to coax Wei Jingxian. "Really, can't you change it?" Jiang Pengji, Wan Xiu chuckled. "Fine, fine. I believe you. I don't ask for much. Just give me a place to stay." Jiang Pengji responded with an "oh" and said, "Yes, I will definitely provide for you." Wan Xiu was overjoyed. Her smile these 2 days was more than the sum of the previous years. Although Jiang Pengji knew about cotton, she did not know how to raise it. Wan Xiu, on the other hand, had dealt with it for a few years and had more experience than her. So, Jiang Pengji asked her, "What plans do you have for the future?" Wan Xiu combed her messy long hair and smiled. "I am under your protection. Other than that, what other plans can I have?" Jiang Pengji shook her head and explained. "What I mean is, do you want to have a career in the future?" Wan Xiu's hand froze beside her ear. Did she hear wrongly? I have no strong points. I am just a woman. What career can I have?" Jiang Pengji said, "You have a strong point that others don't have. After conquering Cangzhou, I will have to rest for a few months. It is not the right way to be militaristic. I have to give the soldiers and people a chance to rest and recuperate. I plan to pick a few good fields to try planting these cotton. After accumulating experience and good seedlings, I will pick a suitable place to expand the scale of planting." There is also news from Wanzhou. Huijuan's spinning wheel has made a breakthrough. The spinning speed is extremely fast. If the two are combined, who knows how many people will benefit. Wan Xiu was stunned on the spot. Her mind was in a mess. Although she did not understand, Wan Xiu knew that Jiang Pengji would not lie to her about such things. This was definitely a good thing. Before Wan Xiu married, she was the daughter of a noble family. After she married, she became a noble lady. Her marriage was not satisfactory, but the quality of her life was good. It was indeed difficult for her to be tormented by cotton planting. However, Wan Xiu had experienced a disaster. She knew that in troubled times, without anyone to protect her, her life would not be any better. Even if there were no benefits to it, she would not refuse Jiang Pengji's suggestion. On the other side, Fengzhen knew that his lord had left the army camp on horseback. This frightened him. There were still remnants of the enemy's troops outside. If his lord was careless and encountered some rascals, he would be in trouble. Fengzhen was anxious. He arranged for a group of people to escort him to Jiang Pengji. The warhorse's jolting made his buttocks hurt. He hurried and arrived just in time to catch a few soldiers carrying pots of cotton and kapok trees. They were moving them to the carriage. Oh my, weren't these Lady Wan's treasures? His lord brought Lady Wan here and even asked people to dig out these trees. What was she trying to do? Fengzhen dismounted from the horse in a sorry state. He raised his hand to fling the hair tie around his neck to the back of his head. Guess what he saw? He saw his lord and Wan Xiao walking out of the courtyard side by side. The former was talking and laughing, while the latter was, timidly, hanging her head and wringing her sleeves. Wan Xiao's hair was loose, and her clothes seemed to have been tidied up. Feng Zhen was shocked. F***ck. F***ck. Wei Ci, Wei Zixiao. Chapter 1053. Feng Zhen tidied up his appearance a little and stepped forward to salute. Greetings, my lord. Even though his heart was in a mess, he was still gentle and calm on the surface. Jiang Pengji looked at Feng Zhen with a faint smile. Did the sun rise from the west today? How could the wanton and unrestrained Feng Zhen be so dignified? Feng Zhen hadn't adjusted his breathing rhythm, probably because he was in such a hurry. Feng Zhen's cheeks were pale from the cold wind, and his lips were blue. His body wasn't healthy, so he looked weak, helpless, and pitiful. Before I left, I've instructed you to do so. Zhi, why didn't you stay in the camp? Why did you come here? Jiang Pengji teased him with a smile. Besides, the wind is so strong outside. If your weak body gets blown away, I'll have to find someone to get you back. Feng Zhen choked and almost choked on his breath. If he wasn't worried about his lord, why would he ride a horse here? Galloping on a horse, the cold wind hitting his face hurt. I heard that my lord left the camp without anyone. I was afraid that an accident would happen, so I dared to disobey military orders. Please punish me, my lord. Jiang Pengji's teeth ached when she heard this. Usually, Feng Zhen would try to smooth things over. How could he plead guilty so seriously? Pretend. Keep pretending. You had good intentions. How can I really punish you? Jiang Pengji said. But, don't do it again. Feng Zhen cupped his hands and smiled. Yes. Jiang Pengji secretly curled her lips. She couldn't really embarrass Feng Zhen in front of Wan Xiao. Otherwise, she wouldn't let Feng Zhen off so easily. My lord, are you taking these panzihua plants away? Feng Zhen glanced at Wan Xiao. You really have tender feelings for the fairer sex. In comparison, he was only accompanying someone to transplant the seedlings. No matter how one looked at it, he seemed to be at a disadvantage. Tender feelings for the fairer sex? Jiang Pengji said. Not only do I want to move these trees away, but I also want to send some people to Xiao's mother's house. Feng Zhen's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't be blamed for letting his imagination run wild. Was his lord going to meet her in-laws? Even though Feng Zhen didn't say it out loud, Jiang Pengji could see through his thoughts. If Wan Xiao hadn't been there, she would have taught Feng Zhen a lesson and let him know why flowers were so red. Seeing Jiang Pengji's gloomy expression, Feng Zhen suddenly realized that he had misunderstood. In order to turn the tables, Feng Zhen asked with a serious expression. His voice was steady and powerful, and it was obvious that he was a serious person. My lord, is there anything wrong with these trees? If it wasn't for meeting his in-laws, then the problem should be with these trees. Jiang Pengji said, the people in the north can use wool to weave sweaters to survive the winter. Those who are better off can burn coal. However, if large quantities of sweaters were to be shipped to the south, the cost of each piece of clothing would inevitably skyrocket, and many commoners would not be able to afford them. There were many fertile fields in the south, which were not suitable for breeding woolly sheep. However, the cotton produced by these trees could solve this problem. This cotton wool can be made into silk and woven into cloth. It can also be used as a filler to achieve the purpose of warmth. Tell me, isn't it very important? Jiang Pengji smiled as she placed the ball of cotton wool in Feng Zhen's hands. The cotton wool still carried the warmth of her palm. When it came to the livelihood of the people, Feng Zhen didn't dare to be mischievous. He gently pulled the cotton wool and even twirled it between his fingers. Is this really possible? In a split second, various thoughts flashed through his mind. Many nobles have brought this thing to play with. I wonder if it's easy to raise? If it's not easy to raise, even if it can be woven into clothes, commoners won't be able to afford it. Also, how much fertile land does this plant take up? If it takes up too much fertile land, it will definitely reduce the production of grain. How will the commoners survive then? If one plant is planted, how much cotton wool can be harvested in a year? How many clothes and bedding can be made into? If a year's hard work isn't enough to cover the cost, then it's better not to plant it at all. Feng Zhen considered everything. Apart from these questions, he still had a string of doubts. It was a good thing that cotton wool could be woven into clothes, but there were still many unresolved problems. Feng Zhen might be unreliable normally, but he was very charming when he was serious. Didn't he see that the audience in the live stream was cheering for him? When Wan Xiao heard Feng Zhen's question, her burning heart cooled a little. Yes, it seemed that she had been too optimistic just now. There were many things that she hadn't considered. At that moment, Jiang Pengji's voice reached her ears. Because of this, we have to send someone to Xiao Er's home to take a look. I think we can find more useful information there. Although there was a live stream, the two worlds were completely different. Not only was the distribution of land and sea different, but even the animals and plants were different. According to the situation in the audience's previous world, it was impossible for a crop like cotton to appear. Of course, there were only a few differences. Most of them were similar. She could use the information provided by the audience as a reference, but it couldn't be used as a final conclusion. Seeing that his lord was rational, Feng Zhen didn't continue to pour cold water on her. Instead, he pinched the ball of cotton wool with great interest. If it can really solve the problem of clothing for the commoners, who knows how many commoners would be willing to set up a longevity tablet for Lady Wan and offer incense to her 3 meals a day. Wan Xiao's cheeks flushed red. How can I be worthy? Mr. Feng's words are too much. Even if there's merit, it's the work of the magistrate of Liuzhou. Many nobles have this plant in their backyards, but no one has said that it can weave cloth and make clothes for the benefit of the commoners. Since ancient times, how many nobles had been unable to make the commoners set up longevity tablets on their own? How could it be her turn? Feng Zhen smiled and said, Lady Wan's thoughts are exquisite, and her words are pleasant to the ear. No wonder my lord cares for her so much. Jiang Pengji coughed softly, interrupting their conversation. This matter shouldn't be publicized. We must send a few reliable people to handle it. There can't be any mistakes. In addition, it's not suitable for Xiao to follow the army into battle. Remember to send her to Wanzhou to settle down. If these two matters aren't handled well, I'll definitely settle accounts with you. Feng Zhen cupped his hands and bowed seriously. Yes. This matter concerned the commoner's livelihood, so it had to be handled properly no matter what. The army didn't have much time to rest, so this matter had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Wan Xiao, who was standing to the side, heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had anticipated this and packed her luggage in advance. Otherwise, she would definitely be in a mess. Feng Zhen was nimble and efficient. Everything had been arranged early the next morning. Lady Wan, I have a presumptuous request. A trace of surprise flashed in Wan Xiao's eyes, but she said, Please speak, Mr. Feng. Feng Zhen took out a box. It looked heavy. I've been separated from my youngest son, Feng Yi, for a long time. I'm ashamed that I haven't done my duty as a father to raise him all these years. I'm ashamed of myself. Mr. Feng has his own difficulties. Your son will surely understand, Wan Xiao said. Does Mr. Feng want me to pass this to your son? Feng Zhen nodded, but his expression showed that he was in a difficult position. Wan Xiao said, "Has Mr. Feng encountered a difficult problem?" Chapter 1054. This Mr. Feng has a loving father's heart. Wan Xiao thought of Feng Zhen's request and her heart softened. She was disgusted by her dead husband, but she loved children. If her aborted child could have been born, would it be enlightened by now? Unfortunately, fate was too thin. Other than her, there were also female soldiers in the carriage who took care of her and ensured her safety. The female soldiers had never interacted with Feng Zhen, so they didn't know his nature. However, people liked to imagine things. If they liked someone, they couldn't help but label them as good. Military advisor Feng was so wise, he must be a loving father. Feng Yi, who didn't know the truth, could only say, "Hee hee." A month later, Feng Yi received a box that her father had mailed from thousands of miles away. There was nothing else in the box except for all kinds of delicate things. It was Feng Zhen's letters to Feng Yi. No more, no less. There were 24 letters in total, and each letter had 4 to 5 pages. They felt very heavy to the touch. Feng Zhen didn't care about being a father and often joked with his son. Although the father and son were separated more often than not, their relationship was much better than that of other fathers and sons in feudal families. "Thank you, madam." Feng Yi, who still looked young, thanked Wan Xiao. He was gentle, polite, and well-mannered. As Wan Xiao looked at the handsome young man in front of her, she had a better impression of him. Her son was so cute and polite. As a father, Feng Zhen was no different. Sigh, if it weren't for this world, Feng Yi would have stayed by Feng Zhen's side and become the father and son that others envied. Wan Xiao saw that Feng Yi's face was weak and seemed to be born with a congenital defect. Her heart softened. Weak but full of spiritual energy, like a beautiful jade with a spirit of heaven and earth. Who wouldn't like it? Wan Xiao smiled. "What are you thanking me for? If not for Mr. Feng's arrangements, I might not have reached Wanzhou safely." Feng Yi saw that she looked tired. She must have been tired from the long journey. Thus, he asked thoughtfully, "Madam, have you found a place to stay since you came here?" Wan Xiao thought about it and shook her head. She hadn't found a place to stay. Feng Yi said, "If you don't mind, you can stay here for a few days." His father was often not at home, so the inner courtyard was empty. It was not a problem for his wife to live there. It was already late, so it would not be appropriate to look for a guest house to stay for the night. "Madam has helped my father greatly. As a son, how can I neglect my benefactor? This lad knows some people and can help Madam inquire about the nearby houses that can be rented. You're a woman, it's always inconvenient for you to be outside. Why don't you stay in my humble abode for the time being and wait for me to find a house to rent or a place to live for a long time before moving out? It will save me the trouble of going back and forth." Wan Xiao blinked and looked at the young boy in front of her in surprise. His height wasn't even as high as his chest. His words were reasonable, and he did things in an orderly manner. He could already see his future demeanor. "Isn't this too troublesome?" Feng Yi said, "Father isn't at home, and there are only a few servants and maids to take care of him. It won't be troublesome." Wan Xiao suddenly remembered Feng Zhen's request and sighed in her heart. What a pitiful child. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you. Feng Yi nodded. He asked for leave from the master of the Golden Scale Academy, skipped the riding and archery class in the afternoon, and brought Wan Xiao to his home. When they arrived at the Feng Manor, Wan Xiao felt a headache coming on. Was she taking care of this child, or was this child taking care of her? Feng Yi arranged a separate and clean guesthouse for her, and sent the housekeeper to a broker to pick out maids to serve her, as well as servants to do rough work. Apart from these, she also ordered people to prepare daily necessities, and had the tailor come over to take measurements and make new clothes. It was a mess, but this child seemed to be very familiar with it and did it with ease. The more this was so, the more Wan Xiu's heart ached for Feng Yi. Who wouldn't like an obedient, sensible, and intelligent child? Wan Xiu even imagined a tragic scene where her father wasn't around and the child had to shoulder the burden of the manor alone. Dalong, the madam in the guest house? The housekeeper asked hesitantly. Feng Yi opened Feng Zhen's letter and read it word by word. Starting from the earliest date, most of the letters were about longing, experiences along the way, and interesting events in the army. At father's age, Feng Yi glanced at the housekeeper out of the corner of his eye, and said calmly, "It's time for him to settle down." The housekeeper choked. Once again, he deeply realized who the master of the Feng manor was. This, Feng Yi said, "It's not right for a man at 30 to still indulge in debauchery. It would be great if someone could control him." The housekeeper was speechless. Suddenly, he felt that the roles of the father and son in the family had been reversed. Feng Yi was the old father who was heartbroken by his rebellious son. But master might not have this intention. The housekeeper said weakly. Feng Yi smiled and said with certainty, "Just now, I tested the madam. She had a very good impression of my father. She even praised him as a pure and upright gentleman. Steward, if my father didn't have such an intention, do you think he would be associated with these 8 words? It was because he had an interest that he pretended to be." The housekeeper finally understood and nodded with emotion. This was probably the rumored, "No one knows a son better than his father." After thinking for a while, the housekeeper still didn't realize what was wrong with his words. If Feng Zhen knew that his son understood him so well, he would definitely be extremely gratified. After sending off Wan Xiu's convoy, he gathered his thoughts and focused his energy on the battle. 2 days had passed. Huang Song and Jiang Pengji had also dealt with the division of the captives. Feng Jin and Wei Ci were in charge of negotiations on Jiang Pengji's side, while Qing Jing and Nie Sun were in charge of Huang Song's side. Because of Huang Song's approval and hints, the two of them didn't take a strong stance on this issue. This was a situation that both sides would be satisfied with, but someone was unhappy. When Yuan Xian heard that his lord Huang Song had given up most of the money and didn't argue when it came to the distribution of the captives, military supplies, and property, he was suddenly dissatisfied. It wasn't that he was dissatisfied with Huang Song's modesty, but he suspected that someone was biased towards Jiang Pengji and was helping an outsider. Who was this person? Nie Sun's face appeared in Yuan Xian's mind. Once this thought came to mind, there was an additional thorn in his heart. He didn't have a good impression of Nie Sun. Now that there was another barrier, their relationship was like fire and water. This matter alarmed Huang Song. He came forward to mediate. The two of them seemed to have forgotten their differences on the surface, but in private, they were even more hostile. Humph. Don't let me get hold of your weakness. Yuan Xian looked at Nie Sun and Meng Heng from afar. When the two of them spoke, the atmosphere was harmonious and harmonious. The thorn in his heart became more and more obvious. He snorted coldly and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Nie Sun's back was facing Yuan Xian, so he didn't feel it, but Meng Heng noticed it. Meng Heng naturally shifted his gaze away. His expression was normal and he didn't reveal any flaws. He even bowed gratefully to Nie Sun. Chapter 1055. Although he had ulterior motives, the gratitude in Meng Heng's words was genuine. His wife was pregnant, so it was reasonable for her to not follow the army. How to settle her down became a difficult problem. If he let his wife travel thousands of miles to Wanzhou, her body wouldn't be able to withstand the torment, and there might be problems along the way. After thinking about it, the only option was to stay in Heda County to nurture the fetus. When Nie Sun learned of this, he privately suggested to Meng Heng to let his wife move to Nie Sun's mansion so that she could keep him company. When Huang Song went to war, Nie Sun would definitely follow him to the front lines. In this way, it was inevitable that he wouldn't be able to take care of his wife, Zhu Qingning. If the two pregnant women lived together, they could take care of each other and wouldn't be in a difficult situation. Nie Sun's suggestion was exactly what someone wanted. It was nothing. No need to thank me. Nie Sun smiled as he helped Meng Heng up. He wasn't unaware that Yuan Xian was targeting him. He also wanted to distance himself from Meng Heng to protect himself. However, established relationships couldn't be broken so easily. His lord, Huang Song, and his lord, Meng Heng, were in the honeymoon phase of the alliance. Nie Sun couldn't forcefully shut him out. Over time, not only did their relationship not become distant, but it also became more intimate. It wasn't exactly good to say that they had a good relationship. It was a very normal friendship between gentlemen. Nie Sun sat upright, unafraid of rumors and slander. If Yuan Xian used this as an excuse to make things difficult for him, Nie Sun wasn't one to be trifled with. The two armies rested for a day, and everyone had different thoughts. It seemed that this turbulent river of pine hid countless undercurrents and schemes. The two armies rested for a few days, and the news that Hanchang Pass had been breached reached the ears of the Zhangzhou reinforcements. Pfft. What did you say? The reinforcements general was having fun with beauties. The tent was filled with the strong smell of alcohol, and empty wine jars were scattered below. Sitting in his arms was a voluptuous woman with a half-exposed body. Behind him, there was also a flirtatious woman massaging his shoulders. His left and right arms were wrapped around two drunken and laughing women. His upper body was bare, revealing his muscles. If one didn't look at the decorations around him, one would think that the man was in some brothel. Where was the atmosphere of a military camp? Hearing the messenger's report, the general was furious. When he understood what the messenger said, he was scared out of his wits. He pushed away the beauties in his arms and pushed away the one in his arms. The beauty who was massaging his shoulders was so scared that she didn't dare to move. The sudden turn of events caused the four women's beautiful faces to turn pale. The messenger did not dare to raise his head, afraid that he would see something he was not supposed to see. After all, no man would like his woman to be seen naked by another man, even if the woman was just a plaything. Hanchang Pass has been breached. Lu Shi and Huang Song's armies are stationed on the banks of the river Song. They seem to be planning to cross the river. Already broken? When was it broken? The messenger stammered out the time. The general was so angry that he waved his hand, and the bamboo slips and wine bottles on the table fell to the ground. Why didn't anyone tell me about such a big thing? How many days has it been since Frostchang Pass was breached, and he only received the news? If this news spread to Meng County in Tsang Prefecture, then, thinking of the possible consequences, the general's strong body shivered. Even if there were a few charcoal basins in the tent, it couldn't dispel the coldness in his heart. There was no reason for him not to be afraid. Meng Zhan received the request for help from the defending general of Frostchang Pass, so he was sent to support the dangerous pass as soon as possible. However, he didn't take Lu Shi and Huang Song seriously. Frostchang Pass was one of the best natural strongholds. The pass was full of soldiers. How could it be breached so easily? With this thought in mind, he led the troops and stopped from time to time. They marched for less than 8 hours in the day, and occasionally stopped to drink and have fun. Originally, they thought they would arrive in half a month. Although they were a few days late, it wouldn't delay the important military affairs. They didn't expect that the 10 days' journey would take them almost a month, and Frostchang Pass had been breached. It's over, it's over." The general was so scared that his forehead was sweating. Even the charcoal basins in the tent couldn't warm his heart. Where are Lu Shi and the others now? Did they cross the river Song? The general knew that he had delayed the important matter. If he was caught by Meng Zhan, even 10 heads wouldn't be enough for him to chop off. For now, he had to find a way to make up for his mistakes. The messenger had a complicated expression on his face. If the general still had a brain, he should know that he had asked a stupid question. It turned out that the other party didn't listen to a single word of what he had just reported. The Huang and Lu armies have their backs to Frost Chang Pass. They are stationed near the river Song. They haven't crossed the river yet. The general was relieved. It was good that they hadn't crossed the river. He still had a chance to win by relying on the danger of the river Song. There was a reason why he was so confident. Most of Jiang Pengji's troops came from the north. There were many landlubbers in the north. Even if they could swim, they could only paddle. Huang Song made his fortune in Haozhou. Haozhou was located at the border between the north and the south. His situation was better than Jiang Pengji's. The former was a landlubber, while the latter was a dabbler. No matter how strong they were on land, they were still rookies in the water. The river Song was rapid. If the entire army crossed the river, how much combat power could they maintain when they reached the shore? You said that the 2 ignorant kids are stationed near the river Song? The messenger nodded. That's right. As soon as he finished speaking, the general burst into laughter. He seemed to be in a good mood. There was no trace of the haze and anger from before. The messenger was dumbfounded. How could he still laugh at such a time? The general smiled and said, "It's said in military books that if we fight near the water, we must go further away. On one hand, we can lure the enemy to cross. On the other hand, we can make it seem like the enemy. If we want to fight, we can't meet the enemy near the water, for fear that we won't be able to cross. If we don't want to fight, we can block the water so that the enemy can't help us. If the enemy leads troops to cross the water to fight, we can attack them when they are halfway across the water." The 2 ignorant kids, Huang and Lu, don't even know this bit of military strategy. What's there to be afraid of? If they fought near the river, experienced generals would set up their camps further away from the river. There were 2 advantages to doing so. On one hand, it could lure the enemy to cross the river. On the other hand, it could dispel the enemy's suspicions. If the enemy fell for it, they could attack them when they were halfway across the river. Huang Song and Lu Shi had set up their camps near the river Song. Would he be so stupid as to fall for it and give them a chance to attack when they were halfway across? The messenger didn't know how to respond. He wasn't very educated. He only understood a little of what the general said. However, looking at his general's confident look, he should be very confident, right? The general ordered the whole army to speed up and try to reach the river Song before the Huang and Lu armies crossed the river. Little did he know that Jiang Pengji and Huang Song had changed their minds. The reason for their change of mind was also quite helpless. Jiang Pengji knew that shipbuilding technology in ancient times was backward, but she never expected it to be this backward. This kind of boat. Before crossing the river Song, the hull has already been broken into pieces, right? She mocked them bluntly. Although it wasn't that serious, it wasn't far off. They could cross the river, but they couldn't count on them to fight on the water. Chapter 1056. Jiang Pengji was irascible, and the audience in the streaming room was extremely disappointed. They thought they would see a luxurious battleship that was comparable to an aircraft carrier in a historical drama, but, Kuang Xia Moshi, what can this wooden boat be used for? The host has tens of thousands of soldiers and horses here. It's impossible for them to disembark in one go with this kind of ship. They might need to do it in 4 or 5 waves. How long would it take to make a round trip? This kind of boat, is it a joke? Jiao, if I remember correctly, in the ancient history of our side, during the Three Kingdoms period, there were ships that could carry 3,000 people. Looking at the host's social background, it should be equivalent to the Wei, Jin, Southern and Northern dynasties period. There's no reason for their shipbuilding skills to be so bad, right? Space drifting bottle, I think it's a geographical problem. After all, this place is closer to the north. Most of the battles are fought on land. There's not enough environment for water battles. It took a lot of money and effort to build a ship, and it was rarely used in battle, so there was no such thing. Want to find a good name is hard. I saw the live stream earlier. The host said that Zhangzhou has developed land and water routes, so there is a lot of business and the economy is very prosperous. Most of the ships on the river were commercial ships. Crossing the river was not a problem, but fighting in the water was not enough. It had only been a few years since they entered the troubled times, and Songhe had been occupied by the Meng family of Zhangzhou for a long time. There seemed to be no wars, so how could they prepare so many military ships? The audience expressed their opinions. The boats were fine for crossing the river, but it was too difficult for them to fight in the water. Many of the audience members were thinking even further. They had yet to conquer Zhangzhou, but they were already thinking about the complicated waters of the south. Baby Bao Bao, why don't you cross the river at the narrowest point? Jiang Pengji furrowed her brows in deep thought. Feng Zhen pointed at the topographic map on the table. The gorge river in the middle and lower reaches of the Song River. The river here is wide and the water is gentle. Why don't we take a detour to cross the river here and attack Zhangzhou in a roundabout way? There are many crossings here, there should be enough boats for our army to cross the river. At this point, Feng Zhen furrowed his brows. His eyes flashed and he said meaningfully, furthermore, Gorge River is adjacent to Haozhou and Chenzhou. The terrain is excellent. If my lord chooses this place, in the future, they could attack Zhangzhou in advance and plot against Chenzhou in retreat. As for why Feng Zhen didn't choose to cross the Pine River at its narrowest point. The Song River was rapid, and the narrower the place, the stronger the current. Who knew how many submerged reefs were hidden at the bottom of the river? If one used this kind of boat to cross the river, the possibility of success was basically zero. The boat would capsize before the person could even reach the shore. Feng Zhen was a playboy. Not only did he have a wild personality, but he also had a big appetite. He wanted both Zhangzhou and Chenzhou. Jiang Pengji squinted her eyes and said with a smile, "A gentleman doesn't take what others like." Feng Zhen understood. "My lord, are you worried that Prefecture Overseer Huang is also thinking of starting from Gorge River?" "I'm not worried. He'll definitely do that." Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Bogeo also has his own thoughts." After a while, she smiled and said, "Bogeo has helped us block the Meng family of Zhangzhou for nearly a year. If he chooses to go through the river gorge, how can we compete with him? What's more, the Meng family of Zhangzhou came for me." Bogeo's willingness to help was out of kindness, but his refusal to help was part of his duty. Instead of damaging the alliance between the two sides, it's better to take the initiative. We'll go around the upper reaches of the Pine River, this way we'll have less pressure. Feng Zhen did not speak, but the others in the tent understood Jiang Pengji's intentions. She seemed to be retreating, but in fact, she was advancing by retreating. Huang Song wanted Chenzhou, so she gave it to him. However, Zhangzhou was under the control of the Meng family, so Huang Song should not even think about touching it. Meng Heng said casually, "If we go around the upper reaches of the Pine River, the pressure on our army to transport food will be reduced." Jiang Pengji's forces were concentrated in the north, so they basically relied on land to transport food. If they went by the river gorge, they would have to go south along the Pine River, which would cause the logistics to take too long to transport food. It was highly likely that they would be intercepted by the enemy. When the forces in the north fought on the water, they not only competed with the resources of both sides, but also with the logistics. If the logistics could not keep up, the main force of the vanguard would enter the enemy's territory alone, and they would not be able to return. On the contrary, if they went around the upper reaches of the Pine River, that would be Jiangpengji's northern territory, and the transportation of food would be guaranteed to the greatest extent. Meng Heng said in a low voice, "Moreover, the river gorge is closer to the south, where the climate is humid and there is a lot of mud in the shallow waters. It's easy for the troops to adapt to the climate, and if they are unlucky, they may even contract diseases. Although the river gorge has its terrain to worry about, it is of little value to my lord." Jiangpengji's goal was to annex Zhangzhou. If she could get Zhangzhou, she would have two places that were rich in warhorses, which would be of great strategic significance. In comparison, Chenzhou, with its flat terrain and abundant resources, was not as attractive to her. Fengzhen understood the crux of the matter. He looked at Meng Heng with admiration, not the slightest bit unhappy that his suggestion had been rejected. "Once we take Zhangzhou, my lord can then plot to conquer Langjie, Hejian, Gaoi, and other counties. You will be able to connect the entire northern territory, and you will have the momentum of a whale swallowing a tiger. It is also possible that you will be able to conquer the world." When Meng Heng said this, his tone was calm, but the content of his words could not help but make people excited. Compared to the small profits at hand, it was better to take a long-term view and make strategic arrangements. For Jiangpengji, Zhangzhou was more important than Chenzhou. If she did not take Zhangzhou, when Huang Song took Chenzhou and then encroached on Zhangzhou's territory, Jiangpengji would be forced into a passive state. After a round of discussion, everyone had a plan in mind. The audience was confused. Although they didn't quite understand, they understood one thing: Yuntian weeping rain, the two families are still in an alliance, but the streamer has already started scheming against Huang Song. Poor baby Huang Song. Meeting a two-faced friend, he did not die an unjust death. Jiangpengji's lips curled into a cold smile. She schemed against Huang Song while the alliance was still in place. He also schemed against her, so she just returned the favor. She was a traitor, so there was no need to talk about morality and righteousness. Just as Jiangpengji expected, after receiving the news that Zhangzhou's reinforcements had arrived on the other side of the Song River, Huang Song suggested to her to split up and cross the river. Jiangpengji took the initiative to suggest leading the troops north along the Song River, while Huang Song wanted to lead the troops south along the Song River and attack Zhangzhou from the north and south. Regarding this arrangement, both armies had no objections. In order not to arouse the enemy's suspicions, the two armies withdrew overnight. As for Hanchang Pass, Huang Song left some troops there and rearranged the arrangement, in case the Meng family of Zhangzhou besieged Wei to rescue Zhao. Before the army withdrew their camp, Huang Song expressed his feelings and said to Feng Ju, "Don't you want to go and take a look? It's good to say a few words. If we miss this opportunity, we may not have another chance in the future." Huang Song was suspicious by nature, but he was also sincere to those he truly trusted. Feng Ju had been working for him for many years and had meticulously schemed for him. How could he be indifferent? Feng Ju's eyes darkened, and his tone was distant. "There's no need. Second brother is not an indecisive woman. How can you not distinguish between public and private matters?" Back then, during the earthquake in Shangjing, he had told Feng Jin, when they met again, life and death were fated. There was no need to show mercy. Although the Meng family of Zhangzhou was annoying, the existence of this force balanced the relationship between Huang Song and Jiangpengji. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Once there was no common enemy, internal strife was not far away. Huang Song sighed softly, but this was not the only thing that worried him. Chapter 1057. Huang Song was not in a good mood for the past 2 days. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? He did not have Jiang Pengji's rich experience and strong beliefs. He also did not have Feng Zhu and Feng Jin's calm and ruthless rationality. He knew that they were different paths, but when he thought of his youth, he always felt a sense of melancholy. If the world was peaceful, how many lives would be spared? However, he was Huang Song, a warlord who had come from humble beginnings to where he was today. Even if his heart was a little soft, he would not be soft-hearted when it was time to be cold and hard. At most, he would complain a little when he was emotional. What if I lose? Huang Song looked calm, but when facing Jiang Pengji, he had always been in a weak and passive position. Win? He wanted to tell himself over and over again that he could do it, attack Cangzhou from the top and Chenzhou from the bottom. When he occupied 3 states, he would be qualified to challenge Jiang Pengji, who dominated the north. However, would things really go so smoothly? Huang Song was confused for a moment. He did not dare to tell anyone else about this confusion and lack of confidence. He did not even dare to reveal it to his wife and son. He even kept his mouth shut when he slept at night, for fear that he would reveal it when he talked in his sleep. Huang Song felt very guilty after saying such depressing words to Feng Zhu, but he could not help but confide in him. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid that he could not bear such heavy expectations. Feng Zhu stared at him unblinkingly with his deep, pitch-black eyes. Just when Huang Song thought that the other party would be disappointed, Feng Zhu smiled and said, "If we lose, Zhu will accompany you to battle the Azura Hell again. There will not be another Lu Lanting there." Huang Song was stunned when he heard this. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body was filled with emotions, and his limbs and bones felt numb. Feng Zhu said, "My lord, do you feel a lot of pressure recently?" Huang Song nodded. He had not felt anything before, but he inadvertently turned his head and watched Jiang Pengji's army disappear into the night. He suddenly had a myriad of thoughts. He had thought too much without paying attention. He had imposed a heavy psychological shackle on himself. It was as if after this farewell, the friendship of their youth could never return. Bogeo, you have to know that you did your best. This is not only a sign of respect for yourself, but also for her. If Lu Lanting is the final victor, she will have won it with her own hands. Her opponent was not soft-hearted and indulged her. Feng Zhu called Huang Song by his courtesy name. Ever since the two of them became ruler and subject, this kind of intimate address became less and less frequent. Huang Song was just feeling it on the spur of the moment. After hearing Feng Zhu's words, his slightly heated mind also calmed down. As the cold wind blew, the rising sun slowly rose from the horizon. The increasingly dazzling morning light dispersed the hesitation and haze in Huang Song's heart. In front of Feng Zhu, Huang Song was still a little emotional. Once he entered the Lord state, he became a person who did not show his emotions. It was difficult for others to pry into his true emotions from his face. Just as he was adjusting his mood, his uncle Yuanqin said that he had something important to report. "What is it?" Huang Song thought that something strange had happened ahead, and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. Yuan Xian cupped his fists and bowed. He looked around to make sure that there was no suspicious person nearby before he whispered what had happened. "Yesterday, I found out that Nie Qingyun and Lu Shi's subordinate, Meng Heng, are very close. They have a close relationship." Huang Song's eyebrows twitched. His slightly soothing mood was once again disturbed by this uncle. How many times had he snitched on him? The two of them are dragons and phoenixes among men. What's so strange about them being close friends? Huang Song was also puzzled. This uncle of his was good at fighting and was very brave. He was good in every way, but he just couldn't get along with Nie Sun. He had personally come forward to mediate the conflict between the two, but he did not expect Yuan Xin to snitch on him. He was friends with Lord Mengheng. Qing Jing and Feng Zhen were even pen pals who had met each other. Feng Ju and Feng Jin were brothers born from the same womb. What was wrong with Nie Sun and Mengheng talking for a while? Huang Song had a good temper with his clansmen, but that was not always the case. If his bottom line was crossed, he would also get angry. However, Yuan Xian said, "Lord, I suspect that Nie Sun and Mengheng's relationship is not as simple as just acquaintances." Huang Song secretly took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you say that?" Yuan Xian puffed out his chest and said confidently, "I found out that Nie Qingyun once addressed Mengheng as big brother to his wife Yeyu." Huang Song was speechless. His first reaction was not big brother or whatever, but anger. Yuan Xian had actually planted someone in Nie Sun's residence? Huang Song was so angry that he laughed. With a fake smile, he asked, "And then? What's wrong with calling him big brother?" This time, it was Yuan Xian's turn to hesitate. He did not know if he should say it. After some thought, it was better to say it. The two of them are most likely sworn brothers. Huang Song was so shocked by this conclusion that he almost fell off his horse. Sworn brothers? What sworn brothers? It used to refer to sworn brothers, but now it was another form of address for a man and a man. Yuan Xian actually suspected that Nie Sun and Mengheng had such a relationship. Huang Song was shocked by Yuan Xian's black hole of imagination. His expression did not change, but his heart obviously could not wrap itself around it. Yuan Xian, however, had his own inference. If Nie Sun and Mengheng had no relationship at all, why did the former call the latter big brother? The two of them were not brothers. One was from the Nie family of Zhongzhou, and the other was from the Meng family of Dongqing. They were completely unrelated. Nowadays, the world liked men. Not only did high officials and nobles like it, it was also a custom in many places. Regardless of whether they were rich or poor, they were all related. The older ones were sworn brothers, and the younger ones were sworn brothers. When the sworn brother married into the younger brother's family, the younger brother's parents doted on him like a son-in-law. In the future, the younger brother's living expenses and marriage expenses would all be taken care of by the sworn brother. The lovers would get married after the age of 30 and still sleep together like a married couple. Look, many people were used to this and even treated the sworn brother as a son-in-law. When the sworn brother married a wife, they would even give him a certain amount of expenses. However, Nie Sun and Mengheng were both married. Their wives were pregnant, but they actually had such a despicable relationship. Huang Song struggled to climb out of this dark hole in his brain. "Uncle, you are not a married woman in the backyard. Why are you so talkative?" Huang Song's words were already impolite. Yuan Xin's face turned red and he felt really awkward. Qingyun is Song's confidant and a noble gentleman. How would he be interested in men? Apart from that, you should restrain yourself and quickly wipe out your spies in Qingyun's backyard. Qingyun didn't stay in the backyard, but he will eventually find out. Huang Song's scolding made Yuan Xian so embarrassed that he wanted to die. He had lost 40 years of face. He wouldn't hate Huang Song, but he would blame it on Nie Sun. Before he left, Yuan Xian added in a stern voice. "My lord, I am loyal to you. Why would I hurt you?" Nie Qingyun is indeed suspicious. Yuan Xian was rarely so attentive. He pulled out Feng Ju. Mr. Feng and Feng Ju are biological brothers. The two of them know how to avoid each other and only see each other twice in the past few days. If Nie Qingyun really didn't have any tricks up his sleeves, why didn't he avoid Meng Heng? He even called him Big Brother when the couple whispered at night. At that moment, Huang Song really believed Yuan Xian, but his rationality made him choose to trust Nie Sun. Chapter 1058. Compared to Huang Song's melancholy, Jiang Pengji's emotions were calm. It seemed that nothing could attract her attention. As they marched north along the Song River, they learned about the situation in various parts of Zhangzhou. Meng Heng and Meng Hun were both from Zhangzhou. Although the former was a Zongzi with no real power, and the latter was a former lieutenant who had defected from Zhangzhou for 8 years, the two of them knew more about Zhangzhou than others. Meng Hun told him what he knew, and Meng Heng added a few more sentences. When it came to war, not only did one have to understand the enemy's terrain and strategic deployment, but they also had to understand their combat strength and troop configurations. Jiang Pengji did not expect them to know much, but it was better than nothing. She took it as a way to kill time along the way. Meng Heng and Jiang Pengji were very serious. They could not withstand Jiang Pengji changing the topic too easily, and as they spoke, they went off topic. I suddenly remembered that Zhengtu stayed in Zhangzhou for a while. Jiang Pengji asked, do the nobles in Zhangzhou really like fighting beasts for fun? Fu Wang tried his best to be a wolf, but his luck was too low, so he was captured by others to be a beast for others to amuse themselves with. It was not a secret, and Fu Wang was not ashamed of his past. Instead, he often used it as an excuse to brag about it. That was why Jiang Pengji mentioned it without holding back. She was curious. Didn't they say that the aristocrats of Dongqing were all effeminate? Would a bunch of mothers like such a bloody activity? Just to watch lives fight for survival in the Colosseum? Meng Heng could not react for a moment, but Meng Hun was calm. After all, he had been with the Lord for 7 or 8 years and was used to it. Rumor has it that the ancestor of the Meng family, Duke Meng, had the ability to tame beasts. When Xia Taizu went on an expedition to conquer the world, he offered up 10 armies of beasts that made people tremble in fear. Like Qiyu, he can control iron-eating beasts, and his battle prowess is extraordinary. If it weren't for Meng Heng, Meng Hun really wanted to call the ancestor's name directly. Why would he use honorifics? Meng Jing was good at fighting and could be considered a scholarly general who was good at both literature and martial arts. He also knew how to tame beasts, which sounded very impressive. Because of Meng Jing's influence, Zhangzhou had always had the custom of raising fierce beasts. However, the ferocious beasts were prone to injuring people, so they died down after a long time. Only high officials and nobles had the qualifications to keep them. Ferocious beasts were not raised for the sake of making them act cute. The rich and powerful were bored, so they came up with a game of beast fighting, completely disregarding human life. Fu Wang was one of the victims. He was neither the first nor the last. Controlling an Iron Eater? It sounds majestic. What a pity. His ancestor, Meng Jing, was known as the White Dragon among men, but his descendant, Meng Zhan, was such an idiot. The future of the Mengs would fall on Meng Heng, the son who had been expelled by Meng Zhan. Jiang Pengji sighed with emotion, but the audience burst into laughter. Riding an Iron Eater? Awe-inspiring? How adorable. Hua Hua loves Pighead. Host, do you know who the Iron Eater is? Sang Ke, I guess the streamer doesn't know. To tell the truth, when I was young, I read about Qiyu riding an iron-eating beast to fight against the Yellow Emperor. At that time, I thought that the iron-eating beast was some kind of terrifying beast. One day, she followed her parents to the Moon-Sun delivery room at the panda base, Yiduanbo. I can't imagine a person sitting on the back of a panda and cooperating with them in battle. Jileo Yi Mei, I suddenly thought of something. In the streamer's world, pandas are wild, right? Hunting is not illegal. Why don't we raise a panda someday? Watching the streamer play with a cat from a close distance, I guess I can't quit this streaming room for the rest of my life. Huayan Ji Yuan, the panda is a bear, but I want to play with it too. Jealousy is driving me crazy. Jiang Pengji was surprised. She knew there were iron-eating beasts in this world, but she had never seen one. According to the audience, the appearance of the iron-eating beast was different from the general description. Shurjiu, have you seen an iron-eating beast? Shurjiu was Meng Heng's courtesy name. Zhou Yiyun, Heng, Jiu. The courtesy name was not good, but it was not bad either. Meng Heng said, I have seen one. How does it look? Meng Heng said, according to the Book of Supernatural Beings, it is sold in the south. It is called nibbling iron. In area, it is also said that it looks like a bear, has a small head and legs, and is mottled in black and white. It can lick copper, iron, and bamboo bones. It looks gentle and harmless, but in fact, it is fierce and aggressive. It can smash a person's head with one palm. Jiang Pengji used her limited imagination to think about it. The image of a black and white-brown bear appeared in her mind. It was quite fierce. Maybe it's because we have different tastes, she never thought she would have the opportunity to witness the cruelty of the iron-eating beast army so soon. The ancestors of the Mengs had the skill of taming beasts, but they learned it from a beast-taming tribe in the north of Tsang Prefecture. To return the favor, the ancestors of the Mengs sheltered the tribe and even encouraged them to marry the people of Tsang Prefecture. Because of the friendship between the ancestors, the tribe and the Mengs of Tsang Prefecture had established a strong relationship. The Mengs sheltered them and provided them with a place to live. In return, they helped the Mengs to guard the northern border. The farming tribes of the Central Plains had developed their farming skills, and the tribes had their own skills. Jiang Pengji led the army north along the Song River. There was no dam on the Song River, so the river was very wide and the current was much faster. Half a month later, Jiang Pengji arrived at her destination. The army crossed the river without any accidents. It was unbelievably smooth. Could it be a trap? Afraid of being ambushed, the army crossed the river with trepidation. They were ready to retreat and support at any time. By the time they all crossed the river and rested for 4 hours, nothing unexpected had happened. It's hard to say. We'll deal with it as it comes. Jiang Pengji frowned. According to the scouts, there was no ambush around. If there was, crossing the Song River was the best chance for the army to do it. What they didn't know was that it was not that Meng Zhan didn't want to, it was that he didn't get the information. The credit had to go to the general who had rushed thousands of miles to help the Hanchang Pass. Meng Zhan knew how many opportunities he had missed. He was so angry that he almost had a heart attack. He ordered his men back 10 times in a row. He couldn't even draw his sword and kill him. Huang Song and Lu Shi's army parted ways at the Song River and split up to attack Tsang Prefecture. Such an important news was hidden by the cowardly idiot. If the news was more timely, he might have been able to send troops to ambush them. But now, it was too late. Meng Zhan was indeed an old ginger. He was more experienced than the new ginger. After venting his anger by killing people, he calmed down quickly. There weren't many strategic crossings along the Song River in Tsangzhou. Huang Song and Lu Shi, the two kids, were probably planning to attack from both sides. Following this train of thought, Meng Zhan quickly circled a few points, drafted a document, and sent out the order as fast as he could. Even if he couldn't resist the fierce attack, he couldn't let the two kids have it easy. Meng Zhan's eyes flashed with madness. He seemed to have thought of something. He sat back on the mat and picked up the brush to grind the ink. Quickly, send these 2 letters to the general guarding Zhangjiang Pass and Yumen Pass. There were 3 natural barriers in Tsang Prefecture, Hanchang Pass, Zhangjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass. Hanchang Pass was a natural barrier to defend against the forces in Dongqing. Zhanjiang Pass and Yumen Pass were different. Chapter 1059. Meng Zhan was astute, but he couldn't handle a useless teammate dragging him down. He wasted the best opportunity. By the time the urgent letters arrived, it was already too late. Huang Song and Jiang Pengji's army had already entered Cangzhou. Huang Song's side was fine. His mission was to restrain Cangzhou's army. He didn't fight with all his might, so the pressure on the south side of Cangzhou was less. In comparison, the pressure on the north side of Cangzhou was much greater. Jiang Pengji led her army and marched straight in. When Meng Zhan's secret letter arrived, her army had already broken through the defense line at the border of Cangzhou. She tore an opening in a tough manner. Faced with the sudden attack, Cangzhou was caught off guard. Before they realized what was happening, the owner of the territory changed hands. The situation didn't improve until Meng Zhan's secret letter arrived. Meng Zhan knew clearly that Jiang Pengji had broken through Hanchang Pass in such a short time. If she wanted to win, she had to come up with something special. He wrote a letter, along with his patriarch's keepsake, and prepared to ask the Gaoyue clan to take action. The Gaoyue clan was a beast-tamer tribe that Meng Zhan's ancestors had a good relationship with. Almost all of them could ride ferocious beasts. Because of the friendship between their ancestors, the Mengs had taken care of the Gaoyue clan for generations. The Gaoyue clan had received countless benefits from the Mengs. Meng Zhan asked them to send troops to stop Jiang Pengji's army, so they had no reason to refuse. However, the Gaoyue clan had been raised too well by the Mengs. They had a huge appetite and were insatiable. They could agree to Meng Zhan's request, but when it came to military expenses, they asked for 1,000,000 strings of coins and 10,000 cows and sheep. Meng Zhan sneered and agreed. At first, the Gaoyue clan and the Mengs had a simple friendship. The Mengs only needed to prepare a place for them to live. As time went by, more and more forces coveted Cangzhou. After all, Cangzhou was rich in warhorses. Who wouldn't want them? If the Mengs wanted to protect Cangzhou, they had to have a trump card. The Gaoyue clan was the best choice. Since then, the Gaoyue clan had become leeches attached to the Mengs. The Mengs couldn't do anything to them. Now they wanted to play the same trick again. Sure, but we can't give them what they want right now. We can only give them 100,000 strings of coins and 1,000 cows and sheep as a deposit. When Lu Bugger retreats with his troops, we'll fill the remaining gap in one go. Meng Zhan didn't show his anger or happiness on his face. It was as if Lu Bugger's conditions were nothing. In fact, Meng Zhan only intended to give a down payment to trick the Gaoyue clan into working for him. As for the rest, that would depend on whether the Gaoyue tribe was still alive to take it or not. The patriarch of the Gaoyue race did not suspect anything. Seeing that there was a 10% deposit, he felt relieved. TSK, the Meng family's son is getting stingier and stingier. Every year, he sends us off with 100,000 strings of coins. Is he sending us off as beggars? The Haiyue patriarch smiled smugly. After he returned to his clan's land, he whispered to his confidant, "Now that we're in trouble, we still have to obediently hand over a large sum of money to avert the disaster. What were you doing earlier?" If Meng Zhan wasn't so stingy, he wouldn't have to pay for it. Since he had been paid, he had to eliminate disasters for others. The Gaoyue clan took Meng Zhan's military deposit and sent 5,000 strong men and beasts to the front line. Although the Gaoyue clan only sent 5,000 strong men, they could easily kill 20 to 30,000 enemies in a war. The Gaoyue clan lived a closed life. They knew Jiang Pengji's name, but they didn't think much of her. She's just a woman. Meng Zhan can't even win against a woman. What a coward. If we capture Lu Xi alive, we'll have to talk to Meng Zhan. We can't just give him 150,000 strings of coins every year. We have to give him 500,000 strings of coins. Although the Gao Yu clan was rich, no one would complain about having too little money. The Mengs used to treat them well. They gave them 300,000 strings of coins and 200,000 strings of coins every year. Ever since the stingy Meng Zhan became the head of the family, the amount of money he gave them decreased year by year. Zhangzhou's waterways were well developed. Merchants traveling from south to north would stop there. The business was developing well. The Mengs occupied Zhangzhou and earned a lot of money. 500,000 strings of coins every year wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Now that someone was knocking on their door, they only thought of the Gao Yu clan. If the Mengs didn't take the opportunity to extort money from them, they wouldn't know who their ancestors relied on. Jiang Pengji had no idea about it. The scouts she sent out had yet to send back any news. My lord, Luofeng dock is just past this pass. Jiang Pengji glanced at the live stream's perspective and roughly scanned the layout of Luofeng dock. Luofeng dock? What's so special about this place? Meng Hun explained, Luofeng dock is located in Qianyan County, north of Zhangzhou. Luofeng dock is densely forested and has low mountains and gentle slopes. Wild beasts often appear there. Most importantly, most of the people in Qianyan County are related to the Gao Yu clan. Luofeng dock is their territory. If they wanted to attack Zhang Prefecture in Meng County, they couldn't avoid Qianyan County or the Gao Yu clan. Jiang Pengji said nonchalantly, so what if it's their territory? If they know what's good for them, surrender. If they don't, then fight. Meng Hun choked. Fighting at the slightest disagreement was indeed the Lord's style. Meng Hun couldn't persuade her, but Wei Ci couldn't just sit back and watch. He said, the army led by my lord is a benevolent and righteous army. Naturally, we have to be polite before resorting to force. If the Gao Yu clan is willing to forsake darkness and seek light, that would be the best. If they aren't willing, it won't be too late to send troops then. If word got out that he had beaten someone up the moment he arrived, it would not be good for his reputation. Jiang Pengji curled her lips. She was here to ambush Zhang Prefecture, but she had to greet them before fighting. As expected, she still couldn't understand the art of war in ancient times. As they spoke, the sound of hooves could be heard from afar. Our scouts brought back a burly man dressed in strange clothes. The temperature had warmed up slightly, but ordinary people were still wrapped up tightly. The burly man in front of them was different. He only wore an animal skin vest and a tiger skin floral skirt. His hair was tied up with a circle of brightly colored feathers, and his exposed skin was full of tattoos of ferocious beasts. His eyes were like an eagle's, his wide and long nose was slightly sunken, and his thick brown lips occupied half of his chin. His eyes swept around, then he cupped his fists and bowed. In a fierce voice, he said, I'm the envoy of the Gao Yu clan. I'd like to see your lord. The burly man's elegant language wasn't very good. His accent wasn't correct, and it was rather hard to pronounce. The envoy of the Gao Yu clan? Jiang Pengji raised her brows. Why are you here? After she finished speaking, she secretly glanced at Meng Hun. Meng Hun agreed to be polite before resorting to force. Did he already know that the army's whereabouts had been leaked? The burly man looked at Jiang Pengji with dissatisfaction. Is this how you treat your guests? The burly man said. You're receiving such treatment when you're on the orders of the clan leader? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.